We're going to start tonight with board and commission interviews. And we have one interviewee for the Green Space Advisory Commission, and that's Joe Elke. Did I say it right, Joe? Okay. And Joe, all we ask you to do is to stand up and tell us why you have applied for the Green Space Commission and what you'll bring to the table. Do you mind going to the microphone, sir?
So my name is Joseph Olke. I go by Joe. I'm been a resident for Webster roughly about 10 years. I'm an ISA certified arborist, tree risk assessment qualified, and also went to college for turf and landscape management. Currently, I'm employed with St. Louis County Parks and Rec as their forestry supervisor. Previously worked for Webster Groves Public Works as their on-staff certified arborist, where I worked there for about 5 years. During my time at Webster, I wrote and received a trim grant, which led to the inventory for the street trees. I have extensive knowledge in urban forestry as well as landscape and design. And it's not only is it a career, it's a passion. I enjoy working with trees and plants. So I think I can bring quite a bit to the commission. So.
Great. Does anyone have a question for Joe? No. Okay, Joe, thank you very much. You certainly bring us good qualifications. We appreciate your interest.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. All right, we'll come back to the board and commission appointments. Is there anything on the regular agenda that needs to be reviewed? If not, we'll move on to the meeting updates, and wants to start, Emerson.
Yeah, I have no updates.
Okay, well, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, we really, the last 2 weeks have been sort of not board and commission meeting weeks. So Pam?
Yes, I do have a couple updates. 2 weeks ago, I attended the Tree City Luncheon with the chair and 2 members of the Green Space Advisory Commission, which was hosted by the Missouri Department of Conservation. All the municipalities were there, and we are celebrating our 38th year as a tree city. Also last week, I walked 3 sections of Shady Creek with staff. I did the section east of Gore on the development site, and then the Larson Park area. And all 3, it is a beautiful creek, it's a beautiful watershed. All 3, the conditions in each of those sections are all different from each other. So I learned a lot, and basically hoping to learn whether we can have a balanced solution between the engineered response and nature restoration, so we can have greater community access to the creek. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura?
So I don't get in trouble. Sustainability Commission met yesterday. Representatives of SG Collaborative were there to answer commission members' questions, and there was a good discussion there. The Sustainability Commission is thrilled that we have now announced that you signed the Mayors for Clean Energy Pledge, and so thank you for that. They're working on some pumpkin composting in November, because for those of you who don't know, you can't put your pumpkins in your yard waste. You're just not supposed to do that. And then they're talking about an open house in November for the sustainability plan. I think those are the major updates. I also did attend the event at Old Community Baptist Church with the Police Community Engagement Board on Saturday, and thought that that was a great event. And while I was there, it was well attended. So,
Mayor, I did have one announcement, if you don't mind. Just to let you know that the Webster Rockville Ministries is starting a holiday season with giving. We're registering our families now. We're asking the residents to give for the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays.
Great. That's always that's a good event. Thank you. Thank you for bringing it up, Emerson.
I do have one more quick thing that I forgot about. Saturday is Make a Difference Day, and
Yes.
so there are 3 events organized for that. One is the Lorraine Davis Trash Bash. Another will be a seed collection, and then the third will be tree planting at Larson Park. And I plan to go to Lorraine Davis and help with the trash there in Shady Creek.
Great. And there are a lot of projects that are in the works for Saturday for Make a Difference Day. we are looking for anyone who is interested in helping a few seniors out with some yard work. And you can either contact me or Steve Clark, who is at the Recreation Center. But we've had several requests that used to go through various other organizations, and due to COVID, things are not what they used to be. So next year, I'm sure they will be. But if you have someone who could volunteer to help with some senior yard work, please let us know. We'd really appreciate that. All right, Marie, do you have anything you want to update us with?
Yes, Mayor, I do. Just a couple quick updates. First, apologies for my back being to those of us that are with us tonight. And just to share kind of the strange format, I know council is aware, but because of COVID meeting in the council meeting room, we've been requested not to do that for good reason. We've got lots of people attending. So we're doing the work session, trying it out like this. And then for the regular meeting, council will move back to their regular places. So just hope the public works with us. We're trying to include as many people as we can. Wanted to thank council for a great strategic planning event on Friday, and we'll have more information for the public soon on that and have our notes and just kind of do some broad strokes on that, but appreciate everybody spending their Friday evenings with us to do that. TIF meeting reminder is October 27th at 6 p.m. It's at the Rec Center. People can attend in person or via Zoom. So that information will, of course, be on the website as well, and already is. Lastly, the Ivory Crockett Fun Run was last week. My first time participating in it. It was a great event. And Councilwoman Richardson and her family was there as well, as along with lots of other people. But it was just a really beautiful day. Couldn't have asked for better weather. So
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. If we don't have David and Karen, there are a few things that I'd like to add. I don't want to preempt Scott Davis here, but the Municipal Park Grant Commission letter came to me, and we were awarded a parks grant of $475,000. Yay, Scott, thank you, for the new addition to the recreation complex. So anyhow, congratulations. I was glad for that. The other thing that I want to talk to council about is every year the council, through Katie and Jen's office, has held a board and commission party. And we did not do that last year because of COVID. And so I wanted to talk to the council about doing something this year. Probably not that full-scale buffet dinner that we've always had, because that's kind of hard to do with COVID. But, you know, maybe a dessert kind of party. And I wanted to ask you all what you thought, whether you'd be willing to help with that, because it is something that we all do. We found one date at the recreation complex that was open, which is Friday, December the 17th. So I'm going to hopefully get some feedback. I know why.
I would like to go ahead and do it. I know that there'll be people who are uncomfortable attending. So I hope that we can, do something for our board and commission members who maybe aren't comfortable coming to an event. But I also do think it's important that we celebrate the work that everyone's doing, and I'm happy to help in any way.
Agreed. I think it would be a good.
Okay.
I agree. I know there are going to be some parameters that must follow, mask, social distance as much as possible, but I think with all those safety procedures and precautions in place, we should have a nice event.
Okay, Emerson, you're on for baking all the desserts.
No problem.
All right, if Friday, December 17th is an okay date, it works.
I
Katie?
already got confirmation on it from Michelle Clemens, so
Okay.
I just asked her to hold it but it looks like a good date if everyone, it's
So
agreeable.
if it's agreeable with everybody
And the only
and
date.
agreeable with you, Marie?
So it must be an agreeable day.
Okay, then we'll figure this out, and I'm gonna get the council folks together, and we'll figure out what we need to do to make that a really celebratory evening. Thank you very much. And I don't have any other updates at the moment, so. All right, we'll move on to our topics tonight, and the first is a fiscal year first quarter budget update, and I think that's coming from Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor and members. You can see on there, and the Zoom folks can see as well. This is our quarter one budget update. through the end of September for fiscal year 22. You received this in your packet. We'll start diving right into general fund revenues. I will start, you probably look at this as I did when I first saw it, and I was like, oh, that's right, cash flow. We haven't started collecting much of the taxes yet that go into these various pots that I'm going to show you. So any real conjecture about the revenue is speculative at this point, but property taxes, of course, come in this fall. They'll be deposited into us here in Q2. So our report in January will show much more progress in that regard. Intergovernmental revenues, the same, the state's transmission to us, the county's transmission. Sales tax, we have, I believe, 2 months of the county shared sales tax deposits included in Q1. The other one has not come and it was not posted through the journals on the end of 9/30. So maybe a month behind in that regard, but 12% you can see on the sales tax. So tracking in line with where we've been on the big three. Licenses at 7%, inspection fees and permits 27%, utility taxes at 15% of budget. These are all percentages of the budget in terms of revenue sources. Fines at 16%, that's municipal court fines and also parking fines. So that's at 17% of the budget. Service fees at 17% and recreation fees at 20%. So despite the fact that day camp having to be shut down a little early with COVID and just the problems of the pandemic, really strong performance there in terms of user base at the rec center and for recreation fees. Other income is the bucket of all the other small line items at about 14% of the budget. So overall, not including the transfers from fund balance, we're at 13% revenue to budget year to date to what is expected for the budget so far on revenue.
Is that relatively consistent with
That is,
past years?
yes. So I think the only thing that is different in past Q1 updates that I look back at is the sales tax was able to be booked in with the audit ongoing and just folks out sick during certain times. Paperwork wasn't booked on the, certain dates. So this is general fund department expenditures. So departments whole budget versus their actuals. City council, the boards and commissions, city clerk, one bucket, I will use that term, 21% of budget to date. Executive and administration at 18%. Finance is the high department at 38%. We, just to explain that, our centralized spends on IT purchases for licenses and such, we do all of those in July at the beginning of the fiscal year. So much of our purchases, Civic Plus, the Microsoft licenses for New World, the financial system, are all paid in July. So that's a bigger line item budget spend than a pay-as-you-go model in some of the other departments. Fire department at 25%, police and the police shared services, ECDC at 23% of budget, and public affairs and engagement at 23%. Public works at 21%, parks and recreation 28%, planning and development 29%. So on path, relative to the budget, nothing overly concerning about that expenditure overall in terms of budget. There are just, I hesitated to use the word threats, but there are exposure and issues that we should always pay attention to. And some that we see over time, we'll talk about in a second. We have always talked about the separation payouts. I want to go through a couple of the slides of numbers there. The economic recovery, that's just a potential. I don't have a slide on it, but just something to keep in mind. Supply chain issues continue. It could threaten, obviously growth in the economy or stalling recovery. So obviously affecting revenues. On overtime, this is our overtime spend versus budget in Q1. You can see some of these budgets are relatively small. The police is showing at 62%. It's a $90,000 budget. So these numbers all reflected against budget, but that is a pretty high spend in one quarter. Fire and public works both at 45%. Again, fire a much larger overtime budget. Public works a very small overtime budget, but obviously it reflects folks who are either out on injury, vacancies in positions, and using folks to fill and do the work that is required. So this isn't a criticism of those departments, rather just it's a note that we should watch the spend versus the budget. So you're all aware.
And we do have vacancies across all three of those.
Yes.
departments, right?
Yes.
How many vacancies do we have in
I
those?
believe there's 4 in public works. Fire, I believe, is it 2?
Two, well, one started actually, so maybe, well, with the police chief included, there's two.
Down to 2 in public works, sorry, 2 in public works.
So
That's not what I mean.
And police?
Police has 4. They're in the process of hiring. I do want to say regarding police, and pardon me, sorry. Regarding police, 1/3 of that overtime is actually planned overtime because that's the community days overtime.
Okay. And obviously that comes earlier in the budget.
It does, it does. And so just to, point that out again, and that budget line is 90,000, which is smaller compared to, for instance, the fire overtime budget. Fire, that 45%, there's not a lot of community days that goes into that because of the way the fire staffing schedule is. They're already on shift for some of that. So there's, maybe some supplies, but it's not necessarily personnel. And then Public Works, I'm sure Mr. Ray might say it's due to some of the storm activity that we've had this year. Yeah, so.
So I bring that up again and talked with the department heads as well, and the departments have been notified. It's just really a matter of watching that and, as obviously a cost driver versus the budget, so. The other is separation payouts. It's something that we have talked about. I just want a little background for you on our policy. Separation payouts occur across 3 different pools of time that an employee can accrue. On the top is sick time. That is only paid out upon separation to employees at 50+ years of age. So it doesn't matter how many years you're with us. If you're not 50 when you separate, this is not an issue. If you're 50+ and have 20+ years of service, you earn and are paid out at 50% of all your accrued sick time. 10 to 20 years of service, you're paid at 25% of that accrued time. 0 to 10 years of service, no payment is made. So it's really an incentive on the sick time, on longevity and age, in terms of that area of funding and the payout. Vacation time, of course, there's a property right for all employees. Any hours on vacation time are paid out at the base rate of pay. Comp time, all hours are paid out as well. That is a much smaller bucket of money per se, but it is a piece of the payouts. Total to all employees that work with us today, obviously comp time and vacation time as of earlier this week, and for those that are eligible for sick time where they're at right now, it's 1.535 million. That is not on the books, except for a very small portion of that in terms of the budget. So if that's a liability that you can think of, that's 1.5 million of exposure that sits out in those payouts. Now, many of the employees would not receive sick time because they're not 50 or they have had under 10 years of service. So
but they're counted in that number, right?
well, they're counted if they're eligible today. So it's a snapshot in time. If you were eligible, I think it was Friday of last week when I ran these numbers. So if you were eligible on Friday of last week, you're in that number. All employees at separation are eligible for vacation and comp except for those on probation, which is 6 months for all employees, 1 year for police and fire.
How long can you accumulate vacation time?
Vacation time is capped at an accrual of 288 hours for those at the high end of the spectrum. Police and fire are a little higher than that because of the shifts they work. The difference, unlike sick time, which is capped at 1,200 hours, we stop accruals when you reach 1,200. You never accrue above that. The city here has a practice of accruing to 288 hours, and then for the rest of the year, you can accrue above that. And then December 31st, we reduce it back down to whatever the maximum accrual is, rather than stopping accruals when they reach. So that's a practice issue, but either way, it can add many hours across the year. And we have some long-term employees that lose hundreds of hours each December that don't take all their vacation.
Leaves a
Devoted.
lot of additional conversation about how do we work? What is the culture of work? Because I want people to take their vacation. So the historic practice of not taking their vacation time and having that many, but there's also, it's very difficult in some of our departments for people to take vacation because there's not coverage. So it's a matter of how can we be more innovative in what we're doing so people can take the time they've earned.
So, sorry, buddy.
Well, my concern is that 1.5
Oh, that's a concern.
liability that we have out there where we have not expensed it or approved for it, or so when it hits us, it's going to hit as a budget.
Yes, and
exception.
it has been hitting, and so I don't want to steal Mr. Peterson's thunder, but people retire, and as they retire, we have had over the course of a couple of years, some really large payouts. Again, people have earned these. I don't want the public or you all to hear that wrong. People deserve their retirements, and what we're talking about though is that sick leave and that vacation leave that we have not planned for within the budget.
So
You want to talk about that?
Yep.
Okay.
So this is just some highlight numbers for you about the most immediate exposure, right? The highest amount of potential liability, meaning checks to be cut. We have 36 employees that are over 50 years of age with 20 years plus of service. Those 36 employees hold 38,778 sick hours. For that time, again, as of last week, $584,000 is the payout for that amount of time. And so that's, paid at halftime. So at the 50% accrual. For those 36 employees, that total payout is $972,000. So I would say out of those 36, probably 32 to 33 are retirement eligible under loggers or under the systems they are in. And therefore, tomorrow, we could start seeing those payments hit the budget. So that's the reason I'm bringing it up is these are concerns that we have to look at. How would we cash flow this and pull it in? So far in Q1, we've made 5 separation payouts in Q1 of this year through September for $43,000. Of those 5, only one of them was in the budget. And I'll tell you, the budget amount was just a shade of $7,000.
How much was it?
$7,000. The other, but you see there's 2 budget, our budget included 2 separation payouts. The other one hasn't happened. It's we believe a retirement forthcoming that has not yet been announced or moved on. So the point being is, as you can see, why this is a budget threat or an exposure is, again, how do we, when that bill comes due, we have the money, but it's part of something we haven't planned for. So it'd be pulling out of the fund balance to provide the payments for those separations. And this is, again, all pensions get taken out of this and all that, but this is just payout of accrual time under our policies. So that is, I'll stop and take questions. And if you have questions on these slides, I'm happy to go through it.
Any recommendations on how to accrue or how to expense this dollar amount so it don't be a budget hit all at one time or not a surprise, I guess?
So
You never know when people are going to retire.
That's the trick, is that you're not gonna get all the
right.
stuff in 1 year.
We do, and I believe for the next year's budget, obviously I wasn't here during initial budget creation, but I think we can create a centralized payout fund, that exists in the budget as an appropriation that's there for these purposes to be able to make these payouts. The real question will come with in making them. Obviously, people have made them. We've talked about this, but policy going forward and such, what is, do we continue with these policies? And as people make more and as potentially salaries increase, that accounts for this moment in time. If we add another 2% next year or even performance pay on top of that, those numbers all move up obviously with that.
So that policy has not changed yet.
The policy has not changed.
Has not changed.
And part of that is waiting for class to come.
Waiting for class and comp to do it as a package. We can still begin having those conversations, and we have. We're having it now. But it really is looking at, in particular, that sick leave accrual, how we pay people out. It really is a practice of the past, as I've shared, to do sick leave payout. So we will be bringing all of that back. Comp and class, I know we have a lot on the agenda today. We got our first update of that last week. So it is coming. It was incredibly informative. We'll come with a package of options, different things to do. And I will share, there are a lot of concerns and liabilities in terms of that. So we've got a lot of decisions to make. And there's also some really, I think, good decisions within there that will also help support employees. As I shared before, I think several of our positions are underpaid, and those are typically in our laborers. As I had shared. And so we'll have an opportunity to assist employees and to be more with market rate as well.
Last numbers, which I didn't put on the slide, just to give you a sense, our top payout, if it happened right now, our top 5 are all between $49,000 and $60,000.
That's on top of a regular budget deficit.
It is on top of the regular budget deficit, and This is one of those things that organizations and municipalities typically have planned for. So we are playing quite a bit of catch up. But as Mr. Peterson said, creating a line item, and we'll have some recommendations for doing that as well. And, you know, it's shifting money from other places, but at least we can start accounting for it. We've also, you know, as we work with our different retirement funds, having people have those conversations and planning for retirement. And certainly people don't have to share with us when they're going to retire, but it does help us plan if we know that, you know, I think I'm going to retire in the next 2 years, next 3 years.
I think, have we started, we do know the number of employees that are in retirement age.
Yes.
Pull the trigger at any time and a potential exposure, I guess.
We certainly do.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your work. All right, our next agenda item is the Parks and Recreation fees, and we're going to have Mr. Davis, as well as the Ivory Crockett Park update. So we'll keep you up here for a while, Scott.
Good evening. It won't be too long. I think I got pretty good information for you, though. The first one on the Parks and Rec fees. So the last several years, we've been taking a look at our fees and making some gradual increases to these. Many of these are in regards to the minimum wage increase that was passed by the Missouri voters several years ago, which takes minimum wage from the mid $7 up to $12 an hour. This year, we took a look at mostly membership fees. There are a few rental fees included, but primarily it's membership based this year. The spreadsheet that was in your handout is the same one that's showing now. The white column is the individual passes. Then in the 2020 number is how many passes we have memberships sold in that category, followed by the current fees, and then the proposed fees are in yellow. So basically all the membership fees, staff is recommending that they go up $5 per membership. That total increase is less than a 5% increase across the board on those memberships. We took these figures to the Parks and Recreation Commission and had a couple months worth of discussions. We talked about it 2 months ago, how we were going to do it and the philosophy around it and what we were going to be bringing to them. And then at the last month's meeting, we brought them the actual dollar amounts and figures, had some really good discussions about it, and they unanimously recommended to bring these fees to council for final approval. It is a pretty gradual increase, $5. We've only raised memberships really 3 times since the facility opened in 2008. So it's not something that we're doing just constantly every year. We are cognizant of other cities' fees. The gray box there shows some of the other cities around that have similar recreation complexes and their fees. I really only just included individuals and family memberships because I didn't want the spreadsheet to be too large and crazy for you guys to try to decipher. But if you look just at the individual fees versus the top line of ours, the full facility, one individual, that would be the same as an individual fee. So we're proposing to go up to $335. Richmond Heights is at $250, De Pere's at $330, Baldwin's at $372, Clayton's the highest at $469, Maryland Heights is the lowest at $200. So we sit pretty well in the middle, maybe the high side of middle on those, but we're still in the right range. And then the second side of this page, there are a few facility rental fees, mostly field rentals. We're a little low on, so we're looking to increase those $5 an hour. And pavilions on the large pavilions would also go up $5 increase. And then a couple pool rental fees for after hours group rentals when you rent out the whole pool, say Friday night from 8 to 11 o'clock. Some of those are going up just a small amount too. So that's the information, but I welcome any questions that you may have.
How much do you anticipate that this will raise for you?
Approximately $20,000
Would that help with the increased salaries that are coming now with minimum wage increases?
Yeah, that's why that was the push, that why we started looking at these, was to try to help recover some of that. It's probably not going to
Okay.
touch it all, but it'll help for sure.
It'll help you with that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So do you have the dollar amount that you're seeking to get to per hour or?
For minimum wage,
Yes.
for next year, the minimum wage, state minimum wage is $11.15 an hour. I'd like to be about $1 more than that to attract a higher quality staff and be able to retain the good quality staff that I have. But obviously, yeah, even more than that would be helpful, because there's many jobs out there that are starting at $15 an hour now, and we're still only going to be at 12 or so starting January 1.
So did you have the issue with finding staff for the pools this year in the rec center?
The pool for us wasn't a big issue, but we contract out all the lifeguard services. It was definitely an issue for our contractor, both at our city, but even more so at most of the other cities. Webster's lifeguards actually showed up pretty well this year until the last couple of weeks, and then it got a little slim pickings once the kids went back to school. It's much more challenging right now to hire staff, part-time staff, than it has been historically. Prior to 2 years ago, it was much easier to hire staff.
Scott, do you have any concerns that, we're trying to build back to participation in memberships? Do you have any concern that raising these fees right now will diminish our ability to recover in terms of usage of our facilities?
I do have some concerns about that. It's more just overall, are people coming back, specifically fitness memberships and fitness classes have been much lower. We still haven't gotten back up to pre-COVID levels. The ice rink's been great. It's actually above pre-COVID. We had a really strong pool season this year after not being open the previous year. So that one doesn't worry me as much. It's really that fitness space and those fitness classes that are just, a fitness class used to have 15, may have 6 or 8 now. So I am worried about those. I'm worried about the trend that people bought Pelotons, where they're doing whatever, they're exercising differently instead of coming to a facility where there's more people there, or there's more people in the classes where we're still inside wearing masks. So I am worried about that. But
Thank you.
I don't know that this $5 is going to stop someone
No.
from renewing their membership. So,
Tell me again, what was the purpose of the addition to the rec center?
so we were looking to put on another box on the front of the meeting rooms that will be able to host fitness classes most of the time. That building doesn't have a dedicated aerobic space large enough to host a bigger class. And then also, my goal is to get that designed by the engineers, who I haven't done yet, but that we can open up the front, the east facing side of the meeting rooms, take that block wall down so that this box will attach to it. So we would have a larger meeting room space then too, to be able to host trivia nights or wedding receptions, where we could take up to 300 some odd people in there, as opposed to the 200 or so that we could take now.
So the fees that we would charge for that room, will it require additional staff, or they provide their own staff?
Very little additional staff. Most of those classes are taught by an instructor. Majority of our instructors are on a revenue share for the classes. The more people they bring into the class, the more they make, the more we make. So we wouldn't have like a part-time person necessarily checking them in. There's obviously more cleaning costs involved with staffing going in there and cleaning before and after. And then for evenings, if it turned into a rental space, obviously we have someone there, but they're already going to be staffed there. If it was a 200-person wedding, they'd still have 2 people there. If it's a 300-person wedding, we'll probably still only have 2 people there.
But the cost of that room will probably cover the additional expense for the employees.
Yes, correct.
There's a huge demand for skating, off ice stuff, dance class, because there are not a lot of really good mirrored exercise rooms nearby. None of the rec centers really close by have them.
I'm just concerned, we're already trying to get a minimum wage. Just don't want to start a new facility, new part of the facility. behind the eight ball already, yeah.
Yeah, had we not gotten a grant that covers 80% of that building, and Dr. Peoples and I had some conversations about it pre-budget that, you know, I was a little worried about building this building while we're so low on fitness classes. The fact that we hopefully be able to dual use it for rentals and such made me a little more comfortable. But if we were footing the entire bill ourselves, it would be a much harder sell to say, yes, let's go do this right now. But with that $475,000 grant out of the $600,000 estimated cost to build it, it's a little easier to swallow. It's still, I'm not trying to say we're just throwing away grant money or anything, but it is difficult.
Do we advertise our public, our spaces to the public? Do you?
Absolutely. So it's in our brochures. It's out. We put Facebook posts up. We reach out to business groups and such, Chamber of Commerce and things, Rotaries and things of that nature, to let them know that it's available. Right now, we do a lot of fitness classes in our meeting rooms, though, which makes them less available for those business meetings that happen during the daytime, or 5 to 6 o'clock at night when you've got a yoga class in there. So building this room will free up those meeting spaces to allow us to have better rental rates.
The fact that we could find one day in December to use the meeting rooms for a
Yeah.
party, it speaks to the usage.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Scott. Thanks very much. We do not need to formally vote on this. I think what all I can do is say, is there consensus among the council to approve these fee increases? Yes. Yes. Yeah. So you have it from 5 of us anyhow. So thank you. All right. Now we're going off to talk about the Ivory Crockett Park update.
All right, Ivory Crockett, we've been doing community input since about August of this year, middle August. So we had our first kickoff event, was the popsicles in the park. We had about 20 residents, well, even some non-residents that were there to talk to us about the way they use the park and how they would like to see the park be renovated in the future. We did a little exercise where we gave them dots that they could place on an overhead photo of the park, showing what their number 1, number 2, and number 3 priority of needs would be. That's what this graph is. So as you can see, by far the biggest thing that they think needs renovation is the basketball courts. I got that total score. Basically, a number 1 sticker gets 3 points, a number 2 sticker gets 2 points, a number 3 sticker gets 1 point. Add those together, that gives you that total score. So basketball was by far the biggest points. And then as you go down, we actually told them not to choose basketball or the walking trails. Unfortunately, not everybody heard that because people were coming up and we were giving them stickers as we were going along. So I think the walking trails weren't, there was 0 on there. They were also already under construction and about 2/3 of the way completed at that time. So, and then we also did, slide down. And then we also did a online survey from end of August through end of September. We got 97 responses off of that. 86 of those were residents and 65 of those said that they were residents of the North Webster neighborhoods. So I'm not going to go through each question for you. I'll just give you the highlights. The info is on your packet. If you'd like, if you have any questions, we can certainly jump on it. The majority of the respondents said that they walk to the park when they use it. Their favorite amenities were the green space and the playgrounds, followed by walking trails and the pavilions. They rank future improvements needs from highest to lowest as playground, pavilion, restrooms, and tennis courts. And then the last question was an open-ended question asking, what's the one thing on the park that you think is missing? And I will kind of show you that because it's a big open-ended question. We had 68 responses. People wrote in on those. Many of those responses might have had 3 or 4 things in one sentence. And so I went through those and ranked all those and put them in categories together. but you'll see, it's a little hard to see on this graph, but some of these are bolded like this one, more trash cans and better safety. So any of them that are bolded, it's on there twice, and I put better safety in this category called safety. And then more trash cans would be down on the lower list. So of those responses, the largest group of responses was about a spray ground, followed by safety, pavilions, landscape design, bathrooms, playgrounds, and then a host of smaller things as we go farther down. So what does all this tell us? Talking with the public, getting their input, their survey responses and everything, as well as me looking at the park and seeing what, and my staff looking at the park, seeing what we think we need. Staff would recommend that the focus on the highest important renovations things be the basketball courts, followed by walking trails, tennis court, playground, pavilion, and restrooms. Good news is you guys have already approved the basketball courts. So we've already got the goals in. We're already on the schedule to get the surface redone early spring as soon as the evening temperatures hit 70 degrees. That one's good. Walking trails already been completed. Public Works has already finished that off for us. Did a great job on it. Got it done at a very good price, much better than we could have done had we taken that out to contract. So the next thing would be the tennis courts. I would recommend that the tennis courts be done at the same time we're doing the basketball courts. I think we can still get on our contractor schedule to have them do that as well. From all the input, I recommend that we make that a multi-sport court so that we stripe it for youth basketball and we buy goals, child size, youth size goals to go in there. We put cork ball lines on there. There's a heavy group of cork ballers that are up there, which I actually didn't know about it. I learned all about them. They come every Sunday and they've been doing so for years. And then also pickleball. So we can stripe that court to include all those things. The pickleball nets would be movable like the ones we put at the Memorial Park complex. So they can be pushed out of the way and play basketball, or they can be brought out for pickleball, or everything can be pushed out for the corkball guys. Cost for that would be about $26,000 all in for the equipment and the court resurfacing. Playground would be the next thing. The current playground that's there is actually the third newest playground in Webster. Followed, the only two that are newer than that are Barnacle Park, which was redone right after the GRG trail went in, and Glen Park, which was donated a couple years ago in 2018. So I wouldn't recommend that we remove all the equipment that's there and throw it away and start over. I do recommend that we can add some additional pieces, some things that we're missing.
You say you do recommend or you don't
I
recommend?
do not recommend throwing it away and starting over. I think we can add a few pieces. Something like this, these are just representative. I'm not saying go buy this piece, but this is kind of the newer style of playground climbing equipment. We don't have a lot of things like this in town. It's certainly something I heard climbing features several times through the public input process. So something like this is about $40,000. We need some more swings, better swings down there. The one on the right here is a parent-child swing, which is kind of a new cool thing. You can put, you know, mom or dad can sit on the lower side, you put the kid up on the top side, you can swing with your child versus standing behind him and just pushing your child. And then the other one's a multi-user swing that's pretty popular. A lot of parks are just putting this type of swing in right now. So I'd recommend we do a little bit of that to increase the play value of those features. The other option to do to go along with that, and the thing that we heard the most out of the open comments was the spray ground. Spray grounds can be very cool. They can be very expensive. So I got some pricing of parks in the area that have been built and kind of what they go for. So this is, well, I'll start with the first one up here. This is Highland Park in Richmond Heights. It was a little over $500,000. It did include the playground features. This is the spray ground, this little triangle right here. And it just has a few sprayers that spray there. That was for the whole park, $500,000. That was everything you see. There's new sidewalks. They had an old playground. They tore it down. They did everything else. New sod, new landscaping, new sidewalks, the pavilions, everything. So that's pretty expensive. Hunter Park in Crystal Lake Park, $155,000. This was just for the spray features you see and the rain garden on the right. It does not include the playground behind it. And then Fogarty Park over in University City, also $155,000. Again, that's just for the spray ground, doesn't include any of the actual playground features behind it. So, and then finally Fayette, they haven't actually named this park yet. That's the city of Fayette, $260,000. And they are building the full spray ground, the site work, all the landscape, and the utilities and everything underneath it for this size spray ground. So a cost on that could be anywhere from probably $100,000 to $200,000 plus to put in a spray ground. Really depends on a lot of features, how many features you put in, what type of water recovery system you're going to use, whether it's a flow through system or you use tap water, you shoot it out, it hits the ground, it goes into the sewer and goes to River de Pear and gets recycled to MSD. Or whether you put a chlorination recovery unit on it, just like a pool, where you capture that water, chlorinate it, filter it, reuse it over and over. Obviously, the recirculation system cost quite a bit more to put in it originally, but you're going to save some money on the back end in water and sewer cost, as well as it's probably just the right thing to do water wise. It would hurt my soul a little bit to throw away that much water every month. But there's certainly a lot of cities that do it. It could be on the safer side to actually just discharge that water. You don't have to worry about recirculating it. And if a sump pump fails or the chlorinator goes out, that you're recycling dirty water. So there's definitely some conversations to be had there. And then the next thing would be the pavilions. We have two pavilions at Ivory Crockett right now. They don't match. They're not sized right. So we recommend that we take both those down and replace them with one nicer pavilion. These are, again, just samples of kind of the size. Probably this one, the size we're looking at, this one's maybe a little bigger and this one's maybe a little bigger, but those are kind of sample shapes. Those would be between about 120, 150,000 to do that. And then finally, the restrooms. The restrooms, I think, need doors put on them. They have a gate that's on there now that can be shut and locked, but they're not locked hardly at all. The other park bathrooms have automatic locking doors that automatically shut. And then when the park closes, there's a magnetic timer on there that locks them magnetically until 7 o'clock the next morning. I think that needs to happen. And that will keep those bathrooms in a little better shape. Not as much overnight usage when they shouldn't be people in there using them. Cost for that would be about $10,000 to put those doors in there. So all that being said, there's a couple questions that I need answered from council, and I'll certainly happy to answer any questions too, but let me ask you mine first so you can start thinking about them. When do y'all want to do all this? Our CIP project had a lot of this stuff phased in over the next couple of years. Do you want to use that phased in approach, or do you want to try to bundle all of this stuff together and make it happen as one larger project? And then second, what's your thoughts on that spray ground idea? Obviously, I can do more research and come back with better numbers, but that's a pretty high dollar amount that was not in our original CIPs at all.
What's the dollar amount over the phase that we had in the CIP already?
Well, I have that right here somewhere if I can find the right paper.
Do you need an answer tonight? Or does council have an opportunity to kind of absorb all of this, think about it, think about this spray park feature before we say Yay or nay?
Yes,
I mean, we need time for a little discussion here. This is quite a bit of money.
both. Yes. 330,000 was what we had total in the CIP for 5 years. That included the walking trail and the basketball courts, which you've already allocated money for.
And that's how, for what period of time, Scott?
5 years.
That was through 4 years. We don't have anything scheduled in the 5th year of the CIP, fiscal year 26. So through fiscal year 25. Mayor, to your question, no, I don't have to have an answer tonight. You guys can certainly digest this.
I think so.
I can put, if you'd like more questions or more dollar figures or different ideas, I can bring more stuff back to you. I'm happy to do some more research. It's just this winter would be the time to start planning if we were going to do a large scale project to bundle it all together to get architects and engineers involved before construction season starts next spring.
I think it would be helpful for us if we had like a sheet or a page that said, here are the costs and here are all the options, so that we could look at that in one fell page.
Scott, is it possible to pull out, like, the one part included the renovation of the entire park? How much, the splash pool or whatever, how much was that of that cost?
That 330,000 doesn't include splash pads at all. I didn't have that in our original CIP. So if you were going to add a splash pad to it, then you're talking $100,000 to $200,000 on top of that 330 that is in this current CIP plan. So you'd be approaching $500,000.
Just so that we get an idea, we do this, it costs this.
Right. Oh,
That's-
talking about when I laid it out. I'm sorry.
When you lay
I
it out,
misunderstood you. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
lay it out on a page for us so we can just kind of assess everything that's there.
Do we have water features at any of the other parks?
The pool has a spray ground, but
Well,
it's
the
inside
pool.
the
Yeah, the
per
pool
pay
has a little
area.
water.
And then Southwest Park has a small water feature. It's got a little creek that
Okay.
kind of runs.
I hardly call that
We've
a
had
water
problems with that
feature.
water feature being vandalized in the past, so it hasn't operated at 100% efficiency through the last couple of years. But we don't have anything that sprays like a sprinkler that you can run through, outside of the.
I'm just curious, would that be chlorinated?
You can do it two different ways. You can chlorinate it, or you can just use virgin
Natural
water
water.
and then waste it away.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to say thank you. Bring us the list.
Mayor. Yeah, so I know you like to get ready to prepare for 2022. So when would you need an answer from the council to start your planning?
Next week.
Whenever you can get to it, I'll continue planning without further direction because I'm looking at all these things to happen at some point anyways. The bigger question is just, do you do it all at once or do we phase it in budget wise? Either way, I'll continue to work on pulling those numbers, get tighter numbers together.
Great. Okay, thank you. We have to do this Douglas Hill planning hearing process update because this is going to help us determine where we go forward in our steps forward. Go ahead.
All right, so I will, you have all seen this slide. We obviously have 3 actions potentially that the council may act on: the zoning ordinance, the TIF ordinance, the development agreement ordinance. As you look at the next slide, TIF ordinance is the one with a hard deadline that we've talked about, end of December. And so I'll just pose the questions that we have for you because we've heard some different things from different folks and also community input on when are the votes going to happen? Is this all going to be with the TIF, before the TIF, after the TIF commission reports? We certainly have asked boards and commissions to give us until November 12th, from a previous council session to give us their comments by November 12th. Do you want zoning to be partnered with the vote on the development agreement? We've heard that from one council member. And then also additional public input sessions. Do you want those scheduled? We've had some requests. You see that in the October 5th questions and answers that we responded. So as staff, that's obviously, it's your process. And so we would like to make sure that the process that we help create for you has the right timeline put together for that process. So this is not on the merits. We're talking about when do you want these items to come for you for legislative action and what other community input sessions do you want to have scheduled?
So,
Dr. Peoples, have I missed anything? Okay,
so question number one to me is, do you want to continue? Do you want to leave the zoning process, move it along, vote on it? Or do you want to hold on to it and use it in conjunction with the development agreement? I mean, we're in the zoning process now. That would
We'll
mean
be keeping that,
public
hearing
hearing
open
open
until-
until
and. the-
whenever.
Along with the TIF. We have to have a date for that. Development agreement, any value in doing the development agreement separate from the zoning?
I think it would, I mean, I'll just say, I think we should not vote until the commission that we appointed, the TIF commission, votes on the zoning. To me, I think we should do the zoning and the development agreement along at the same time. I just think the development agreement is our chance to be clear on what we're looking for that is not already in the zoning agreement. We can kind of drill down on some of the details. And
But if we approve the TIF right along with the zoning agreement right along with the TIF, the development agreement is the master document. So because we approved the TIF and the zoning, it's just standalone decisions that has no bearing on the project itself until we finish the development agreement, correct?
well, as I understand it, the development agreement, we can put forth things that we need clarification on: workforce housing, stream buffer, et cetera. And then we can get a response back on those items. So we're putting in things that we would like in writing. We have not had an official chance to do anything. We've been
Oh, I agree.
absorbing.
Councilmember Smith, to answer your question, yes, the development agreement is sort of the yes, the go vote, right? It will require, before you do that, TIF and zoning, so to be enacted, whether on the same night or before that. So the development agreement can, I don't want to use the word linger, but can be scheduled at your desire. I think the real point of this here is the zoning change is prepared for legislative action now. We're in that process. Do we continue that until the time that the TIF ordinance is presented to you in one package? The development agreement would not be ready tonight, and it may not be ready for the next meeting, November 5th. So the 21st.
Can't be ready for that meeting because we haven't had a chance.
Exactly. I'm saying a city draft, a draft from staff that is trying to surmise all the things that we've heard, so.
I don't see any need not to approve the TIF and the zoning at the same time.
Yeah, I just think we should go ahead with the process. I mean, we're in the zoning hearings now, and either the zoning piece is approved or not approved. And it would be helpful to know that before you get to the redevelopment agreement.
Another question. So if we do approve the zoning, and while we're doing the development agreement, we brainchild that there's something else we want in the zoning, do we have the ability to go back and make any changes, or just make that an addition to the agreement?
So you're about, that would necessitate a change in zoning?
Yeah.
So because the nature of the TIF plan that has been submitted conforms to plan commercial, if the nature of the plan were to change substantially into something different, so say the development went back to industrial and we'd have to go through this whole process, that would restart all those processes and to go back. So plan commercial for the multifamily, residential and commercial uses, I'm going to look back at Mara and make sure is the appropriate zone. And there's some flexibility within that. But again, the nature, this is really TIF. That's the issue under the TIF law. The TIF plan would have to be wholly restarted if the fundamental nature of the project within plan commercial changed from what was presented in the submission to the TIF commission.
So the need probably won't be there to change the plan.
No, I expect that the zoning and the TIF can go forward as they are, and then it's really the redevelopment agreement where you're going to make, or the development agreement, you'll make those particulars known, so.
I would favor just moving forward with where we are now and not changing the process at the moment, but
I say at the same time, if we have, if the TIF and the zoning is ready, I think make that decision at that time.
I guess to me, I'm thinking there's pivotal things that we can have in the development agreement that would affect our vote on the zoning.
I guess
So-
that was my question.
Right.
Is there anything that we would agree on in the development agreement that we would need to change the zoning agreement? Or the zoning ordinance?
Right, that's why I'm saying we do that, do a development agreement first. Or get that underway first before we vote on the zoning.
I like that we're having it underway at least.
Yes.
underway, but I guess, Pam, if I understand your point correctly, it's that there's a possibility that something, it goes into the development agreement that would make one of us more likely to vote for the zoning
Or
Okay.
either way,
or less.
either way.
Okay.
I think it's just provides clarity where we haven't been able to ask for clarity in writing.
But we can change the zoning ordinance. I mean, we can change that. If there's something, yes, we can.
But
I mean,
can
we
we change
haven't
the,
had the first or second readings yet of the zoning ordinance. So if there's something in the zoning ordinance that we want to change, we can put that forward at this point.
so if they go alongside, then we are doing them both. We're kind of moving each like this.
So please remind me of my parliamentary procedure because I'm getting confused as we're talking about all these dates. When we say go ahead and vote on zoning, what does that look like? First and second reading, next meeting, vote the following meeting?
We are fundamentally, we could be in that nature. If you are ready on the 5th, we could have first and second reading of zoning and third reading and final passage of zoning on the 21st. The 21st would be the first night of the TIF report. Should all things from the TIF commission fall in action, you'd have first and second reading of the ordinance for TIF. However, what we'll need to talk about is in that, the time for you to really dive into development agreement with Mr. Grimm from our draft to what inclusions or exclusions you want from a draft.
So we could move this forward without necessarily having to do the first and second reading in November. We can hold the public hearing
You could
open
hold it
for
open.
another one and do the actual vote after we have the TIF agreement or TIF, whatever
The
the
TIF
TIF folks
yes.
might say.
So we will approve the TIF and the zoning primarily almost at the same time.
Close to, we could do that before the end of the year. We'll vote on it.
Did not want to wait until we finish the agreement to approve the zoning. We need to get that behind us so we can focus on the agreement.
It's really, it's a matter of your choice in that regard. You certainly can do all three. I mean, if you want to, other than TIF, you can stack them up how you wish. So obviously the development agreement, the TIF, the boards and commissions, I know some are meeting in early November to bring feedback. So we have given them till the 12th, just giving you a sense of that timeline. And then obviously we expect November 21st, that week of November, to start the TIF ordinance, should the TIF commission move it forward on the schedule that the staff has proposed. So
And you know what, I had forgotten about that November 12th deadline for boards and commissions. And I really would not want us to vote or do anything too substantial without hearing that input, because we've asked them to give us input, so we need to take that input seriously.
So I
we can-
guess tonight we're going to
21st.
move forward with public comments. And at the end of the public comments, it sounds like perhaps the council would like to leave the public hearing open for at least for another meeting. And that will allow us time then to get the boards and commission comments in and move forward then.
And then that's fine. If that's the will of the council, I can do that. We can set that up. I'll look to that last question. We have had some questions and also from community about, is this our only time tonight to talk to council about this issue? This is the only ordinance that requires the public hearing. So the other ones do not. So I'm looking to you, do you want additional public input sessions regarding this topic? that don't necessarily need to be the statutory hearings like this. They could be town halls, they could be, if you want us to do scientific polls on, through the phone, tell us what you're looking for so we can help plan and schedule it.
Madam Mayor, in terms of other public commentary, you all did hold the other meeting nights, and I don't have my calendar in front of me. I believe it was October 24th.
25th.
25th, thank you. As a possibility, if you wanted to take additional public comment in this forum.
So a question, because it sounds like there's a lot about different ways we can do public input. Would it be possible to change the format of the public hearing or a typical council meeting to accommodate a different form of community engagement, or would this be an additional date or meeting?
We certainly could change it. It depends on the format and such. I mean, if you're talking large station type of engagement and things like
Yeah.
that, which I've seen done, I would suggest not trying to do it in this room during a council night. And,
Okay.
Really,
Okay.
let's go to the rec center and find the right time. If it's a virtual event, or if you just say, we want to poll the community and, I mean, those kinds of inputs, that's really what we're looking for, because we don't want to prescribe your process, but rather make sure we fill your need.
I mean, we set aside that date. I think we should take advantage of that in some format, and I think it probably should be an alternative format. So just, because this setting is not comfortable for everyone, and some people will want to say things in a different way. I mean, my preference would be something less formal, station-wise, but again, I don't know if we can get the rec center on time to do something like that.
And that's only a week away. That's the
Yeah,
unfortunate
yeah,
problem.
it's
That's what-
okay, right. We
yeah.
don't have a whole lot of time to promote it either.
If you'd like something like that, we can schedule that pretty quick. I think, I just don't know that next Monday night is the doable time for that type of an event. I think we're probably a couple weeks out, just to make sure we get the space, and then also the right kind of stations with information and staffing for it. So.
When we were asking for public input on Ivory Crockett Park, and we had the signs with the
QR.
scanner, with the QR scanner, how did that, did we get very much?
Yeah, it came right to the survey that you were just looking at the results for.
And have we considered doing something like that for additional public input for this as well? Is that?
We can.
Mhm. So that it's around and people can do it at their convenience, and it does go straight to the survey, and it might assist in getting more feedback.
I think what I'm looking for is like a dialogue or more feedback, rather than just submitting comments online and hearing comments and then us.
But I mean,
Listening.
could that also be done? And is there value
Yeah,
in getting that in addition to a forum where there's interaction, exchange?
And you have seen in your packets, we've received multiple comments via email, so people are one-way communicating to you. It's really, if there's a different form.
like an
I'm happy-
enriching
Yep.
sort of, yeah.
Sure.
A discussion.
So
So it sounds like the council is in favor of doing some additional
Okay.
public comment. And we'll need to work on how we do that, whether we can do it at the rec complex or all over City Hall. I mean, you could put things
Sure.
in the conference room and in here and downstairs, and people could come and talk. And I think that's what I'm hearing that we're looking for.
So we can definitely submit some dates to you all, check on dates and some of that type of function. I'm
You know, and there's nothing that says all seven of us have to be at the same one. I mean,
Right.
We could hold two, and that way we get more dates available, and we can split
Mhm.
among ourselves based on our schedules too, because I know sometimes it's hard to pin down a date for us.
even if we don't have the rec center, we can try to find some open spaces, a church large enough, things like that. So,
Board of Education got the
Yep.
warehouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, school district, that's
Okay.
fairly large.
yep. So I'm
All
doing good
right, so
direction.
we'll do that. And in the meantime, though, tonight we will move on with our public comments.
Yes, and am I hearing that you do that to hold October 25th?
We're not sure. That's what.
Well, no, that was for more of an informal dialogue process in terms of formal public comments. People coming up speaking.
Oh, on
Can we wait and see how tonight goes?
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's do
If
that.
everyone has the chances here to speak and not warn everyone out.
And do we have clarity on the process moving forward, or are we going to circle back on that? I'm
I don't-
not.
No, well, I don't think I think we will continue with the,
So if you continue, what I understood, so I'll just recap, is that first and second readings for TIF and zoning would come on November 21st when they're together. So the 5th would lay open, I guess would say the public hearing would be continued, lay open for that one meeting, and the 21st would have TIF and zoning ordinances. And obviously, Mark Grimm has started the work on the draft development agreement, so we'll start to schedule meetings with you to go over that document. That's obviously starting in the closed session conversation, so.
all right, and then Merry Christmas, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm sure I'm clear. So the first and second reading of the TIF and the zoning would be on the 23rd.
21st of November or 20th, something in that month.
November 20, whatever first
Well, the
that is.
21st is on Sunday.
Sorry, for
Well,
23rd.
whatever day it is.
Yeah.
Okay, that second
Then we
meeting,
follow up in December with the final. and go.
we'll have to do that with the TIF.
Yes.
It might be the 19th. I cannot remember the
Yeah,
date
I
off the top of
can't
my head.
remember
The second
the
meeting
date
in
either.
November. That's my.
Okay, we got all these folks. We have, and appointments to boards and commissions, folks. Can we appoint Mr. Elke to the Green Space Advisory Commission? We have two
Yes, I think
vacancies. He would be great.
With the future trees of distinction program, it'd be perfect.
It
And
would be perfect.
yeah,
And we'll talk about the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting appointment at the next meeting. We have a couple of folks who are interested, and I think it will be better if we discuss that. It's okay. All right. For everybody who's here, we need a 5-minute break or 3-minute break at most, whatever. And we get the tables turned around and give us an opportunity for a minute. Okay, all right. All right.
It's on.
Good evening and welcome to our city council meeting, and our apologies for having you wait for us. We've just had a lot of business to take care of tonight. We welcome you here this evening, and when we get to the public hearing, we'll talk a little bit about how we proceed, but we'll start first with a roll call.
Yes, Mayor.
Here,
Mayor Welsh? Yes.
here.
Councilmember Arnold?
Here.
Councilmember Bliss?
here.
Councilmember Franklin? Absent. Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Councilmember Alexander?
Here.
Councilmember Richardson?
All right, we're going to reopen our public hearing tonight on the 21 PCO 4 Douglas Hill. I don't know that we really need to reread that entire.
I can if you want me to. It's I'm your reader
I
tonight.
think we don't need to do that. Okay, we'll just say it's an application by SG Collaborative for a change in zoning. And we will first start and see if there are any additional questions or staff issues that people here on council want to ask or deal with. And then we will open this up for remarks. And we have a number of speaker cards, and we ask you to fill out a speaker card and you will be called on. And we're going to ask you to hold your comments to 3 minutes, because that's the way in which we have an opportunity to hear from everyone. And so we'll deal with 3 minutes of comments that are respectful. So let's start first and see if there are any questions or issues from council. Or Mara, did you have something you wanted to deal with first?
So we did send to you, there were some outstanding questions from the last meeting, and we did send you responses. And so we were going to, if you wanted us to, go briefly through our responses. And if you would like.
I would appreciate that. Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm going to go through mine, and then I know Public Works is here, and I know the other directors are, I believe, online to answer additional questions. So my first one that was in the list was providing examples of limitations if you were to rezone this to another zoning district other than PC, which is a planned commercial, if you were to put it all into an industrial zoning, or if you were to put everything into an A4 zoning, what those limitations were. So in the code I had, in the copy that I provided to you, I had provided copies of the code regarding non-conforming uses. So in our code, it always identifies that if you change the zoning, and this did happen in some areas of Old Webster back in the 1980s, when you change the zoning and there's already something existing there. So for example, if there is a business that's already there and the zoning has been changed and that new zoning district doesn't have the use that was there, or has created new setbacks or something that is not in compliance with what's already existing, that's considered a non-conforming use or a non-conforming structure. And that non-conformity in the code is not allowed to be expanded upon. So for example, if a business is there, they can remain there, they can continue to operate, they can continue to work on their interior, they can do all kinds of things, but they can't add on or expand that business. They can't expand the structure. And they also cannot, if there are structural alterations that need to be made to any sort of wall or the roof that are currently not in compliance with the setbacks that are in there, they can't do that either. So it puts a lot of limitations on non-conformities. Most people know that there are lots of non-conformities in the city of Webster Groves because our zoning ordinance was put in place in 1956, and we have houses that go back to the late 1800s. So many times people go in and get variances when they have a non-conformity. And so it just creates a lot of non-conformities. We prefer to limit the number of non-conformities because then it just, again, causes all these different potentials for people needing to come in for individual variances. So those code sections were provided to you. The other two were related to things that are more visual. So there was a question related to the height of the existing stealth cell tower flagpole that's on the property today, and the relationship of that to the height of the proposed structures. So staff used both the survey of the existing site as well as information that we had on file for the approved height of the tower, as well as the extrapolating from topography that we have, and have identified where the height of the tower sits. And again, it's rough and it's pretty approximate, but knowing where the elevation of the different parts of the property are, and then knowing the total height of the tower, we scaled that out. And then we scaled using some photographs, again, what that height is in relationship to the tower. The tower is 134 feet. And then the proposal is showing 60 feet off of a very specific elevation of the street. And so we did get the approximate location of where it is on the site today and provided that for you.
So go into a little detail more. So where that line is where the.
So this orange line along here is right at approximately 60 feet. Again, measuring off of a photograph of the existing tower, scaling that out to the 134 feet, and then scaling backwards to figure out where 60 feet was on there. And then this one is the 60 feet and the 134 feet. This photograph was taken from Pacific, so that it's right there so that I could definitively find the base of that flagpole. Much more difficult to find the base of the flagpole over here, but I was able to scale a photograph from the opposite side, try to then scale it around on the other side and try to determine where that orange line would potentially be. So this one is a little bit more rough. This one is much more accurate. And then this one is just, again, based off the approximate location from Kirkham, where it would be up on the hill, where that base would be in the grade. And then the last question that was asked at the last meeting was related to examples of screening. The language that we had put into the draft of the ordinance was tied to some language that had been put in when we did the educational campus zoning. We'd put that in there because we knew we had a lot of larger structures that needed much more complex mechanical equipment up on the roof. And so this is one example. The Interdisciplinary Sciences Building was one of the first ones built after we enacted the educational campus zoning. And it did have, in this case, a series of fans that did need to sit up above any sort of screening. So you can see that little element of this, the fan piece that's above. But in the approval by Architecture Review Board, they created a design that, or the Architecture Review Board reviewed the design that was created by the architects that would provide screening for most of that area. And I did identify in your packet the height of that structure on the Webster University campus is 65 feet in height, and they had an additional 7 feet for their mechanical equipment. So it was a total of 72 feet above the average grade. This was one that you could go out and maybe see yourself to see what the screening looked like in that case using that particular code language. So those were my 3 items. If there were other questions in the packet.
Other questions?
So the current PC, that little section, those people are not able to expand the ones that are currently there because they are non-conforming.
That is correct.
Okay. Right.
All right,
Anything
and
else?
I'm gonna, if there's nothing else for me, I'm gonna leave this slide up for Todd.
Okay, Todd? This is Todd Rake, our Public Works Director.
Hello. So one of my questions was, would the proposed plan push traffic onto Marshall Place or Oak Avenue? So my response was to see the SG Collaborative's independent traffic engineer's response, and really you don't know where people are going to go to try to avoid congestion or trains or whatever. But if they go on Oak Avenue, that crosses the tracks again, so they're going to get stuck at the train again, unless they go out. And it's kind of, it doesn't show it on here, but it's kind of a weave pattern to get out to Kirkham.
Use your
Off of
point.
Oak.
Use that mouse for me, will you?
I don't know if you can-
Thank you.
It's hard to, so here's Oak, comes off of Rock Hill, across from the development, which is here. So it goes down and then it comes down at the bottom here, it comes across to the tracks again. So even if people would go this way to avoid the train here, they're gonna hit the train down here. So they're gonna do it one time and they're gonna realize, oh, I can't go that way. Marshall Place would take you out to Elm, and it's near impossible to make a left out of there to go north. It's easier to go south. So the only thing that we could possibly do to try and prevent that would be to put up signage for no through traffic at either end of Marshall Place and either end of Oak. But then you would have to pass an ordinance to make that have meat behind it and for the police department to enforce it. So then the other question was about is there a way to direct traffic onto Elm without going onto Marshall Place? And again, that would be either putting that no through traffic signage, or you could do a detour signage route to get people to go down to Kirkham, back to Elm. You just have to put up detour signage. So. And typically detour signage is just temporary for construction sites. So you put it up permanently, people would eventually get used to them and just ignore them. So. Anything else?
Anything else for Todd?
I think we had questions about mitigating what the triage would be for the creek if if it was a no build scenario.
Yeah, if it was not approved, and then we were to locally fund the floodplain improvements, well, you'd have to get an engineering study first. So that's going to cost you upwards of $600,000 just to do that, to evaluate the creek and the structures. And then you're looking at, so the Elm culvert that we're currently under design is 1.25 million to replace that. So then you got the Gore culvert, that'd probably be another $1 million project. Newport Bridge was new. We redid that about 8-10 years ago. So that's new. So that one should be fine. There's one more culvert north by the industrial park area that goes underneath Kirkham at an angle and discharges on the park side on the other side there. So that's a huge culvert. I don't think that one probably needs to be upsized. You could drive through that.
Thank you. Anything else?
And then you got another question was about asking for when we expect to hear from utilities. I have no idea when utilities are going to get back to me. And probably they don't have it as a priority because they don't want to upgrade that stuff without anything going in there. So
And those are for the infrastructure again.
all
if it
the
was
water
another bill.
mains, the electric lines, the gas lines, yeah.
All right.
Right. Anything else?
Madam Mayor, just briefly, there were a few questions asked to me. I'm happy to answer any questions. You have it in your packets if you wanted to go over anything on that. So,
You did answer them in your packet, correct?
yes.
Go ahead, if you would.
Yeah, certainly. So we were asked a question about potential taxes. Let me just take a second here to pull it up so we have it. This question came up, so we put a table together, which I will try to scroll down here and find. I'll just go in order here as we come down with my responses. So the school district is formulating their answer on the question about if this is a no build and what are their potential other revenue options. So they're formulating their answer. We certainly don't want to speak for them. About business districts, we were asked, is the city willing to undertake business districts? We certainly are doing that now. We are working with our 3 business districts in the commission and align that. Economic development is a priority both for the city manager and myself and what we do with our businesses. We can take a much more holistic view of the entire city as well. We're starting that with our business roundtable. And I'll put on the table, and I know this will come with some gaspings of breath here because it's a thing about identity, but there is some real potential if we start to look at, instead of having 3 small independent business districts, really leveraging the city as a whole across the revenue streams and how we can best leverage the money that comes in. Not to take away identities from Old Webster, Old Orchard, and Crossroads, not to do that, but really talk about how the best do we pool that money to leverage it across the entire community. Marshall and Summit are left out of our efforts. The frontage road on all of Watson is left out of the efforts at this time of the city. It's centered in those 3 business districts. So I think there's opportunity there. I know that comes with a price of working through a process with those organizations and what's there, but that is a potential opportunity in terms of business districts. Also, Mark Grimm did discuss the value of the TIF and the question about non-taxable properties. This is the answer that he provided. I don't want to, it's in your packet and certainly you can look at it, but essentially what he's saying is that the value would not, other nonprofits would be distributed to the taxing district as if the property were currently taxable. So the redevelopment agreement, and this is a question for you all, one of those things we'll put in the draft and do we keep in, will it include future taxes attributed to the value held by Webster University and the school district can continue to flow into the taxing districts even if they're taxed now. So not held against the base essentially is the long and short of that. This is the table I was discussing. I was asked about if a person spent $1,000 in certain areas. So Old Webster Business District, we have 2 different tax rates there. The top one at 9.238 is our standard city rate, or 9.2375. I rounded just to make the math a little easier for everyone. The Shops of Old Webster also has the TDD, a Transportation Development District, for two buildings, the building that Layla D.B. Mao is in, and then also the Straub's building. So they have a little higher tax rate. So there you can see the revenues that we would take in on that. That does not include the pooled sales tax. Trying to run through the formula for that small amount of money the mayor knows. We had some conversations this week about understanding the formula and pulling that together. In the Douglas Hill TIF area, the same as the Old Webster area, there's no tax at this time being proposed. That obviously there's conversations about the SID, but we don't have anything in concrete that is coming before you yet. So
Does the SID, if there is a SID, does that become part of the development agreement? How does that?
Yeah, so that's
get
a separate agreement outside the TIF ordinance. So that would be a potential 4th action for you at some point. And it would be it can be part of the development agreement in that conversation. It would be a separate ordinance, but it can be the uses of that and how it's done and such built into that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Online purchases, I was asked about this, $1,000. Missouri, until we haven't started implementing the Wayfair decision yet, so zeros. So you spend $1,000 online, that's all zeros.
Nothing.
And then I think for all of you, probably the biggest shock is the gas tax. So the 19.5 there, the 19.5 cents is the new rate. You can see $195 on $1,000 of gas. When you take our population model, we have to sell a lot of gas to get a lot of money on gas tax, motor vehicle tax. So So that is a fun formula to work through. I think that is the extent of mine, other than we talked about public engagement, which was this one here. And I said, that's the point of our work session. And we just talked about that. So we'll be putting together a plan.
Anything else?
It's up to you, Mayor.
You know, this does remind me, in a work session not too long ago, and I think Neil was maybe going to work on this. You know, there was discussion of eminent domain, and we don't have, to my knowledge, we do have a Gilmore and Bell memo that talks about how eminent domain works. But we don't have what sort of the actual steps would be for our action, right? I understand where you go and what you do, because the statement has been, we decide eminent domain, we being the city council, but I still don't understand, to my satisfaction, how that works.
We will get that for you.
Thank you.
That'd be good. Anything else? All right, nothing else before public comment? I'm going to share something that I'm going to send to you, and I want to put in the public record also, because I have all the train crossing information. We've been discussing how we don't know how many trains cross, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it's all public information, and I can tell you that the Federal Railroad Administration does crossing inventory reports for railroads throughout the country, and they're available online. You can go yourself to the Federal Railroad Administration's website. They do it for every crossing in the country, and I attached 2 reports for the North Gore crossing, which I pulled out this morning. One for 2020, because the train traffic there is a little bit less than it was. On the other one is 2017, but it was revised in 2019. Oh, that's enough. The historic data is available for 22 years, so you can get that. So if you look at this data on the first page that is there, it indicates that there were 24 trains a day that went through that crossing, 12 from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and 12 from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I think 2 of those were Amtrak, because Amtrak was cut quite a few of their trains last year due to the pandemic. And so you can do this, you can see that that's the case. Before the pandemic, there were 28 trains a day that went through the Gore crossing. And as I said, you can get the same report for every crossing, but it's the same information. So we now know that we're dealing with somewhere between 24 and 28 trains a day that are going along those tracks. The average freight train now is 73 cars, but they are now extending them up to 200 cars. So you have that sort of data. And I suggest you go to the website, look for yourself. There's a heck of a lot of information there about railroads and crossing, and you can pick up every accident that's occurred at any crossing in Webster, and they will even tell you how many train cars were stuck because of the accident. So I those of you who need to find information about the railroad, it's all there. So I wanted to add that in, since we've been talking about the need to have information.
So Mayor, make sure I'm understanding. So on this first page, you're saying between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., there's only 12 trains that come through that time
Right.
period. So we don't know how close to 6 a.m. it is or how close to 6
No.
p.m. is.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
And there are 12 trains that go between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. And so we don't really have a schedule. Although I think the folks at UP will be happy to work with us if there's additional information that we want. Okay. All right, so now we have an opportunity to hear from the public. And I have a lot of speaker cards here. And again, I'm going to ask you to give us your 3 minutes of respectful conversation. And I'm going to start with, are these came from Bob Lazetko? I can't, Larechko? Can you? What is it?
Lazechko. All right, Bob, you can come up here to the microphone and we'll be happy to hear from you. When you speak first, give us your name. You might spell your last name and your address. Thanks, Bob.
Okay. Once again, my name is Bob Lazechko, Lazechko. My address is 442 Oak Street, Webster Grove, 63119. The first thing I want to say is I'm a rather new resident of Webster Groves. I purchased my property in March. And part of the lure of Webster Groves was this historic downtown, and it's that. And so the first thing I want to say is I am not anti-development. I think sometimes that's been painted as a picture. I'm pro-smart development is what I like to say. I'm in favor of development. I think development's a good thing. It brings tax dollars to your city. It brings interest in doing that. But on the same thing, development should not be a win-lose situation. And the way I see with the size and scale of the proposed development, it's a win-lose situation for the city. And what I mean is it's a win for the tax base. It's a win for commercials. It's a lose for certain neighborhoods. It's a lose for the quality and the charm of historic downtown. And so even in your own statements from your own zoning commission, when you split 4-4 on the vote, the person that voted it said they had concerns about eminent domain and side issues and from the planning commission. And that was one of your yes votes when it came to that. Okay. The other thing I'd like to encourage you, if you've seen, I've seen you put up on the board the height of the buildings. I don't know if you've seen the renderings from Kirkham, all of them put together. And I know some people have put that together. So it's an interesting scale to look at if you put all the buildings, the renderings, what it would look like from Kirkham, from the north view. So I encourage you to take a look at that, okay? Lastly, the concern I have too, being a public school teacher for many years before retiring, is safety of the public. And I don't know if the questions have been addressed with the fire safety. I know there's been some discussions with the TIF using money to build things. But if you had a 7-story fire and you also had schools on fires, and I'm not trying to be worst case scenario, do you have the capabilities to take care of these issues at this time? So what I would encourage you is, I am not against this development, but I think there are serious questions about the development. And I don't think it needs to proceed forward to say that we have to go this route with this, that there can be a workable solution, or maybe there's not. Maybe Mr. Chapman doesn't want to have a workable solution, or he can't work out a system with the council. But I think as proposed, it is a win-lose situation. And I would encourage the city council to make it a win-win situation for everybody. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Our next speaker card is David Yates. And David, I'm going to follow you with Jason Sellers.
Good evening, council. Thank you for having time for us tonight. I'm David Yates, I'm at 477 Oak Street. And I was going to talk a lot about trains tonight, but it seems that you've talked about what I was going to talk about. So basically, safety is a big concern with me, with my two young sons who always want to run up and down Oak Street and run to the sculpture park. So the additional traffic was or is a huge concern of mine. And the knowledge that we now have the train schedules, I think Ms. Falkenrath has some homework to do to provide a report that's more reliable about what the traffic flow will be. So this is not my only concern. As an architect, I have worked on numerous multifamily projects in the past, and this by far, for about 25 years, this by far is the most dense number of units in a footprint I've seen. I've seen it maybe like 1 building, 2 buildings, but having 7 buildings or 8 buildings, 7 stories tall is just crazy. Where was I? And as others will point out, there's actually no population loss like the development team has said. It has stabilized and actually has increased by 4% over the last 10 years. So the claim that we need more density is not, I would say, an untruth. And then the typology of the building, this 5/2 or 5/1 construction, is basically the least common denominator that someone can build. It allows the developer to build as tall and dense as possible for least cost and yet be code compliant. And code compliant means you're doing the very least you can do to make it legal, which I want to ask the development team, why can't they do better? Why can't they make it better? So in short, I say this is a money grab by a bully developer, claiming it's their way of the highway with no change and not listening to anything the citizens have said. From a year and a half ago when this first started, we've seen a curb cut on Kirkham added. No other changes made to the development. So it's not, basically as Webster residents, the development team expresses that they're all Webster residents. Maybe this development team can think of what's best for the community and not what's best for the bottom line. So lastly, I will say, to quote Mr. Chapman, at a plan commission hearing a while ago, he said that there's a very definitive misinformation campaign being put out. And that's a fact, but it's coming from their team. And over the last week or two, the social media that has been pouring out from DH website has been a bunch of untruths, non-truths. And the remarks on those pages have been very not popular of the development. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Jason Sellers, followed by Nikki Lemley.
Hello, Jason Sellers, 415 Oak Street. I'm here this evening to discuss problems with the poll results that Chapman presented at our last meeting. As much as we'd all like to know where the public stands on this issue, the poll conducted by Show Me Victories is not a reliable source for that information, and I'll explain why. One of my areas of focus while pursuing my PhD at Berkeley was psychometrics, which is the field of study that constructs psychological measurements. These can be cognitive, like the ACT or the GRE, or they can be non-cognitive, things like something you might fill out at a doctor's office. Professionally, I've designed measurements that are used to guide hiring decisions in several large school districts around the country. First, let me be clear, SG did not hire Show Me Victories primarily to conduct a public poll for support of this project. That should be obvious by the name of that company alone. Show Me Victories works in 2 stages. First, they use a baseline survey to determine messaging that resonates within their target demographic. And second, they use that information to build a campaign to get their clients results. Demonstrating public support for the project is part of that campaign, and there's an obvious conflict of interest. When was this survey collected? Between July 19th and August 1st. 3 months have passed since then, and the public is now much better informed. This was before people saw the photos on Facebook showing the scale of the project from Kirkham, before letters to the editor began appearing in our paper every week, before hundreds of residents spoke out against this project at the Planning Commission meetings. A poll is a snapshot in time, and a snapshot taken 3 months ago is not relevant today. Next, who responded to the survey? Accurate polling relies on the assumption that every person in the population is equally likely to be sampled. That's impossible in practice. So what we end up with is what's called a convenience sample, people who are convenient to reach. To adjust for this imbalance, pollsters typically weight the sample to match the population. Did that happen in this case? Although I've asked SG repeatedly for information about how the sample was weighted, the response rate and the margin of error for each subgroup, they have not been fully transparent. My best guess, based on the information I have received from them, is that the survey was only weighted by census tract. There's a lot of variability in income and age within each of the 4 census tracts in Webster Groves. And what about gender? You don't need a background in statistics to see that it's much more likely that a pollster is going to receive a response from a wealthy retiree than a young single mother working 2 jobs. Because SG is unwilling to make their analysis public, we have no way of knowing whether or not their sample matches the population. Finally, let's look at the questions. The question that Chapman is reporting on whether or not people support the project is asked twice, once at the beginning and then at the end. In between are approximately twice as many questions highlighting positive aspects of the development, many of which are misleading, as there are addressing negative aspects. So after respondents have heard this sales pitch, they're again asked whether or not they support the project, and that's the result that Chapman is reporting. The nature of SG's relationship with Show Me Victories and their unwillingness to share information that's standard reporting in a poll such as this raise serious doubts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sellers. Nikki Lemley, followed by Stephen Musial.
All right, good evening. Nikki Lumley. My residence is 1335 Webster Path Drive, Webster Groves, Missouri 63119. Over the past 3 months, the Chamber of Commerce for Shrewsbury, Rock Hill, and Webster, we've been in conversation about Douglas Hill redevelopment and reviewing with business owners that surround the project. After careful consideration of the potentials and the pitfalls, we have concluded that the area to be redeveloped is underperforming economically and is a visual eyesore currently. The area has the potential to add millions in new revenue to the city of Webster Groves, the Webster Groves School District, and other entities. Increased revenue will prevent more drastic property tax increases in the future for residents of Webster Groves. New residents in the development within walking distance of Old Webster will bring new customers to many existing Webster Groves businesses. The redevelopment project will have a 10% set aside for workforce housing. The redevelopment project has the potential to make the Shady Creek area walkable and enjoyable. The redevelopment will provide infrastructure to prevent future flooding issues along Kirkham Avenue and the surrounding area, which would need to be addressed by the city otherwise. We trust the Architectural Review Board to ensure that the buildings themselves will be aesthetically pleasing and not the gray monoliths that some people have portrayed them as. We're concerned about the impact on neighboring businesses, such as Rolling Ridge Nursery during construction and for adequate customer parking post-construction, and will continue to press our concerns during the writing of the development agreement between the city and SG Collaborative. For the reasons stated above, the Webster Groves Shrewsbury Rock Hill Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors voted on October 14th to endorse the redevelopment project.
Thank you, Nikki. Stephen Musial, followed by Michael Kujian.
Stephen Musial, 559 Brainerd Place. I'm here to speak of the renderings which SG has been providing. They are in no way accurate. They should be showing 5-story buildings and 7-story buildings, and yet they only show 5-story buildings. The proportion of the buildings is completely incorrect, and it just takes away from the mass and size of the actual building, and the actual size of what's going to be there. I think the public and the council is entitled to see what this is going to look like, how this is going to affect the area, what the impact will be on the neighbors. There are sun studies that have been done that show the shade, how it's going to be affecting the buildings at various times throughout the year. So I think before this moves forward too much further, there should be actual real life renderings done of the project. And then my second point, I was hoping to talk to Mr. Franklin, but he's not here. He had asked about the phrasing of the building TIF projects in a floodplain. Mr. Chapman answered that that was just added in at the very end. But going back to Senate Bill 22, which was on the back side of your paper, by the way. Senate Bill 22, it calls out that any area designated as a floodplain by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. So that phrasing has never changed. It was not added in at the end, as he stated. And to conclude, I think that we need developments that are going to be defined by Webster. We don't want a development that's going to define Webster. And something of this size is going to redefine what Webster is. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Let's talk to Michael. Can you help me pronounce? Yeah, well, you'll do that up here. You'll pronounce your name right.
I'm used to that. My name is Michael Chakudian. I live at 138 West Cedar. I have kids that own houses on Slocum, Lockwood, and Gray Avenue. And I'm here representing my family, which is all against this project. Now, if you ask my daughter, who has her kids go up to the St. Louis Gymnastics Center. She said, no way are we getting rid of that place. Her kids love that place. They don't want to get rid of that place. My other daughter hates traffic. She says, we don't want to get traffic. My son, who lives over on Slocum, who he calls it affectionately Larson Valley, he said, oh, we're ruining Larson Valley. He said, come out of my house and see this big project there. He doesn't want to see that. I myself don't like it because, and it's just 1,000 reasons, but here are some pictures that the pick. I'm going to put them on the table up here for you guys to look at. What a 7-story building looks like.
We need you to speak into the microphone. So here, no, we need you to speak.
This is what a 7-story building looks like. They're developing it right now on the Cleat Avenue and the Central West End. And so I'll put this picture here. This is just a rendering of it, to kind of get you an idea of scale. You can take one if you like. And here's the actual picture of the building they're building. So you all can go up there and take a look at this building right now and get an idea of what it looks like. But, you know, we don't see anything. We see developers' pictures and beautiful renderings and stuff like that, beautiful butterflies. But, you know, before there was a butterfly, there was a slug there. You have to be careful. Now, the traffic, and I'm really.
Mr. Chakudian, please speak into the microphone.
I'm a little bit appalled that the developer was here just last month and said, oh, I can't find any information about the trains. You know, we don't know what to do about the trains. I mean, it's kind of a little bit, what do you want to call that? Missing a beat. Secondly, the developer here was last month and showed a big chart. The chart said, look, Webster Groves is losing all these people. From 1960 till today, we've lost 3,000 people. What happened to those people? Well, you know, I'm going to be 70 years old. I remember driving my bicycle on the new highways when they were building them through towns. Those highways were built in 1960. So, you know, the big swath of Webster Groves was taken by Highway 44. Is that a secret? Did the developer not know that? Because the developer doesn't know his homework. He doesn't talk about trains. He doesn't talk about the highway coming through here. So I don't know if I have a lot of confidence in what he does know. That's all I got to say. I don't like to steal at all. Too much traffic. Wait, one more thing, if you don't mind. Okay. A lot of people have talked about the cost of this project. I did a calculation before I came here today. The calculation is based on another 45 seconds of waiting in downtown Webster to get through traffic.
Okay, Mr. Chakudian, thank you very much. And you can put your comments in writing and send them to us.
It's
Okay.
$225,000 a year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Hey, whoa, that's just, all right. Our next speaker card is Rebecca Now, followed by Tom Lang.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I am the Executive Director, Rebecca Now, with the Chamber of Commerce for Webster Groves, Shrewsbury, and Rock Hill, 357 Marshall Avenue. As Nikki has presented, because we discussed this with the Chamber quite extensively, we need to presence that the current land is underdeveloped, not producing economically, and it's an eyesore. And I think that's the important point to begin with, that it cries out for something better for Webster Groves. I heard an earlier gentleman talk about charm and the beautiful little businesses in Old Webster. I must tell you, if you go down North Gore, it is not exactly jam-packed with shoppers on a Saturday afternoon. This development, with an addition in population, will raise all the businesses in Webster Groves, the existing businesses, as well as whatever businesses come in. And to me, that's a key point, that some of our businesses on North Gore, on Lockwood, on Allen Avenue are not exactly thriving. And this would help them, and it would help our community by increasing the tax base, by protecting the homeowners and residents from escalating property taxes, and it would be a win-win. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Tom Lang, followed by Rory Bielik.
Can I take my mask off just to come?
You can do that.
Thank you. Yeah, I just got my third shot today, so and no sore arm, but and an incredible urge to buy pumpkins. So I don't nothing. So I think everything's okay. Sorry to follow the Chamber of Commerce because that sounds really interesting. Maplewood's a thriving business district, but has 1/3 of the population of Webster. So I don't know how you measure these things, but it really doesn't add up for me. I'm not a numbers man, I'm an artist. I've lived in Webster for 50 years. I live on Oak Street. That's one of the reasons I'm here. That's the area that's going to be the most affected by this. My printer didn't work. I was planning on having a much more organized presentation where I would tell you what you knew and what I knew already. You already know that there's going to be insoluble traffic problems there. I've suffered that over my life with loss. And I know that it's going to be that bad. There's no way to solve that. Right now, there are traffic problems. It's going to be incredible. And it's not going to begin when the buildings are built. It'll start when the construction happens. There's going to be 5 years of trucks going up and down that road, hundreds of trucks hauling away the debris that destroys that neighborhood that's called an eyesore. As an artist, I have difficulty finding that. What I would see as an eyesore is buildings that are not designed with any particular architectural style. Webster has, the homes in Webster represent 12 different styles of architecture that are identifiable. And many of them date back to the founders of Webster. So the history of Webster is certainly a part of the face of Webster, which will disappear. The censuses show that actually Webster has grown rather than declined. So that's false statistics that's come out. It's really, we're doing okay. Webster, the formula for competitive things seems to be build on your strengths, and the strength of Webster is its history, the quality of life. It's rated number 2 by a website. I was looking online, number 2 in Missouri as the most livable city in Missouri. How can you do better than that? By building big apartments? I don't think so. When I first moved into Oak Street, my son went up to Shady Creek, which I love, not an eyesore. It's a beautiful thing. And Webster Groves has done a wonderful thing with one part of Shady Creek by developing that wonderful place where you can take paths through the animal area. The kind of, it's just fantastic. We found almost every day we could find arrowheads in the creek. So there is a history to that creek as well. It should not be ignored as things get developed along that. It's part of the history of Webster. It's part of the history of St. Louis.
Thank you, Tom. All right, Rory Beelig, followed by Jenny Fagan.
Hello, Council. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to pick up where Tom left off with his son at the creek. No, I'm just kidding. I'm Rory Bielek. I'm also on Oak Street. We're well represented tonight. And I want to start off by thanking, and I think Councilman Bliss, this was your idea, and I am thrilled to hear that we might have the opportunity to have dialogue and discourse on this, because I think that that's a really thrilling way, to talk about issues rather than me standing here at a microphone and talking to you. But since that's what I'm here to do right now, I have been following this for a while, and I'm just trying to figure it out. And just when I think I have it, then something flies out from the side. Like last time on the 5th, I sat here and I was, doing the little calculations in my head on 700, 770, and then it's 900. And I'm like, oh, I missed it again. At this point, I don't know what I don't know about this, but I go back to the RFP process and I look at that. And thank you, Mayor Welsh, for your statistics on the railroad, because I worked for the last 13 years before I moved here for Amtrak, and I knew that those statistics were there, but I don't have to do that now. You've done that for us. And but I can tell you from living on Oak that, I can listen out my back door and there it is. And I can walk to the end of the street and see how far up Rock Hill, to Gore and beyond things are backed up. So, those of us who live here know. I moved here from New York 5 years ago, and I specifically chose this, this town because it's walkable, because I love the people, and I still do. And I hate that we're all fighting over this, because I would like to talk about other things besides this. But I walk every day with my dog, and I look at everything that's going on, and I see the people, and I talk to them at the gym or at the church. I went to the hot dog, giveaway at the church and talked to Reverend Hayes. And, there's a lot of great people, and I think there's a lot that we could do. And I hope that area is developed. I just don't see how it happens this way. And I feel weird about it being so all or nothing. So I would hope that, there's something in between, and that's possible. And then beyond that, I know that there's, from walking around, a lot of areas of Webster that could be improved. And I hope that I can do something to help you all do that. I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rory. Jenny Fagan, followed by Dave Buck.
I want to breathe too. Okay, my name is Jenny Fagan. I live at 434 Hawthorne. I've lived there for 30 years. And I just wanted to say a little bit about what bothers me about this development. The name Douglas Hill. What a slap in the face to North Webster community. The project epitomizes gentrification to me. 10% workforce housing. Is that his foot in the door to show he's doing something good? This project does not represent diversity. And did we as a community, and especially my North Webster neighbors, move here so we could live next door to 7 towering buildings? The all or nothing, not willing to negotiate mentality of SG is suspect. Where's the good neighbor feeling on leaving the sculpture park in place? They cannot even guarantee that. What a great time to push through a huge development project when town hall meetings are on Zoom. Who did they poll? Where were the town hall meetings? Were the town hall meetings with the church affected businesses and neighbors? Did they discuss traffic and trains with the neighbors? We've certainly heard from their experts. I've zoomed in and attended multiple commission meetings and just got the feeling from many committee members that they did not do their homework. They didn't know the area. They didn't know the businesses affected. This is part of the Deer Creek Watershed Alliance. Why are Webster Groves Commission members having their first meeting with them October 28th at their annual board meeting? Kind of late, don't you think, to gather facts? And the environmental impact of this area is huge. Comments from the committee members like, no pet or plan, so I'm going to vote yes. They can hopefully move the owls. Sierra Club will maybe help with the landscape. They're planting native trees. Do they know what Sierra Club does? They'd lay in that creek to save it. The riparian area on Kirkham will be wiped out. Let's be honest. Cement walls, conduits, deep holding wells, and massive bulldozing. Construction, cement, trucks. Will orange fencing be put up around the vegetation and trees? And will they protect the fish and wildlife that call Shady Creek home? No, everything in the development area will be displaced and destroyed. No more riparian area. We humans are at it again. Is this called bringing us back to nature? This is SG's motto. Can't Pacific be developed side by side with the present businesses and they not be displaced also? We are supposed to be a smart, creative community. Well, let's be stewards of the land and environment, preserving this riparian area and develop thoughtfully what we already have on Pacific. The climate and the future will thank you.
Thank you. Dave Buck, followed by Farrell Carfield.
Having fun. Dave Buck, 124 South Elm. Webster Groves is a creative community. And in creative thinking, there is always more than one right answer. So my first right answer is that I support Douglas Hill 100%. Just like I supported the Mills project 20 years ago. The last 5 words of our mission statement for the city is a traditional yet progressive community. We got a lot of people on the traditional side. I think that's wonderful. I just lean progressive. I like new ideas, as you all know. My second right answer is that I predict Douglas Hill will be defeated either by the TIF Commission, City Council, or by the overwhelming resident opposition in a referendum vote, just like it happened with the Mills project and like it happened with Prop 1. I think it's inevitable and the destiny has already been determined. My third right answer is my best and last, which is like when you're kids, you take a do-over and you start over from scratch. As somebody mentioned earlier, our community is not anti-development in the entire city, much less the site. But the point is, we are anti-development of Douglas Hill. There are other ideas that can go in there. And I would start that process by relooking your 4 objectives in the second paragraph of the original RFP. In my estimation, they are really weak goals. They're vague, they're broad, they're undefined, they're not specific, they're not measurable, they're not quantifiable, they aren't SMART goals, Emerson. And the point is, in business, we had an old saying, which is garbage in, garbage out. I'm not saying those goals are garbage. I'm not saying Douglas Hill is garbage, but when you have weak goals, you didn't give SG Collaborative much to work with. The third goal was promote new development. Well, what in the hell does that mean? There's no direction. I mean, what is SG Collaborative to think? So anyway, that's my third right answer, but I want to end by saying something about SG Collaborative. These people are not our enemies. They are our friends. They are our neighbors. One of them lives just down the street from me. He's a terrific guy, great family. I also know Liz and Dave and her family. And the fact is, they care deeply about this community. The other thing, as somebody who has spent his entire career developing new ideas, I applaud them for their courage of conviction, for standing up, taking the ridicule, taking the criticisms.
Time.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, I think
All right.
they've done a good job.
Farrell Carfield, followed by Valerie Murray.
Good evening, Farrell Carfield, 542 Sunnyside Avenue, and I'm here speaking on my personal behalf as a resident. I wanted to share my belief in the potential of local government and the role of this body. The decision about this development is not one that can be made by soundbite or slogan. Each aspect of it, from the human component to the use of TIF, to the economic impact, to stormwater concerns, just to take a few, merits in-depth study and consultation with experts. I am disheartened by those neighbors who want to rely on shortcuts, like criticizing processes they have failed to participate in and accusing public officials and the developer of shady dealings. This development proposal is a perfect example of why we rely on deliberative bodies, such as City Council, to make complex, high-stakes policy decisions with transparency. I just listened to an interview with President Obama where he said, the thing about elected leadership is if it was an easy decision, it will get resolved before it ever makes it to your desk. That's what I'm grateful that you were there for, to weigh all the evidence and make the best policy decision that you can. I'm very concerned about the effort to permanently change the city charter to put all of these questions to a public vote. It connects to the national backdrop of those working to erode government institutions. I don't mean we need blind faith in government. I recognize that local institutions have sometimes worked to perpetuate injustice and preserve the status quo. And as you all know, I believe in advocacy, challenging public officials and asking for accountability. But it's quite another thing to buy your way around representative government and try to circumvent deliberative process. The times are changing. Our elected bodies are finally more representative of the fullness of our community. I feel protective of the potential we have at this time for inclusive local institutions that shepherd in change and progress. If I had to decide on the development proposal tonight, I would support it going forward. I'm still listening, but I believe we need to do something different than we have been doing in order to be a vibrant, more populous, and more inclusive community. This development by no means accomplishes that on its own, but I see how it could be an important component of such change. But it is a close call, and there are many people I respect who come down on the other side. Because it is a close call and a difficult decision, I hope the community can hold together and show more faith in city leaders and this public process, sticking to the facts and doing our homework to be engaged, informed citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Farrell. Valerie Murray, followed by Karen Finnegan.
Hi there, Valerie Murray, 519 South Gore. My original question was actually very well addressed earlier about the survey that was referenced at the last meeting. I just have one additional comment talking about traffic studies and the traffic tie-ups the trains cause and might even cause much more delay. You know, the trains aren't the only reason people are going to take the side streets. I mean, I live on South Gore, and when rush hour comes around, morning and afternoon, people who want to avoid Elm come flying down South Gore between Lockwood and Big Bend. And that's so just avoiding trains is not the only reason that people are going to be taking Oak and Marshall and the other roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Karen Finnegan, followed by.
My name's Karen Finnegan and I live on Marshall Place. And I've lived there for 20 years, and for 20 years, we've had problems with traffic, service trucks, and traffic from the trains. We've tried to, Public Works, there should be a record. We've tried to alter the street in many ways, one way, parking on one side. We've been fortunate that no children have been hurt, but it's been scary with animals, and our cars have been hit twice. And so have many other cars on the street. The thing that bothers me the most is the integrity of this project against neighborhoods like ours. We're a historic street. Probably over 70% of the houses on our street are historic. We can't change one thing on the outside of our house without approval, yet this is going to change our whole neighborhood. We used to have people stroll through our neighborhoods, and our houses were listed on the Webster Walk. We have discs in front of our house on the sidewalk giving the year of our home. And now people can't even hardly walk down it with the service trucks that are there. Just fast forward a few years and imagine what it will be like. There won't be walkability down our street or in Webster because there'll be too much traffic. And I think that will hurt the local businesses rather than help them when people can't walk freely through those streets and neighborhoods because of all the service trucks. I know what service trucks are doing right now to our neighborhood, and we don't even have this started. I can't imagine once it gets started what the ongoing, even after the building, the ongoing service trucks to service that many people would be. And I think it would change the integrity of Webster forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Kathy Hart, followed by Ann Yard.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Hart. I'm at 821 Newport. And I came tonight to ask you to please listen to the citizens. When over 80 citizens came to council to raise their concerns before you passed the text amendment allowing more duplexes, you barely discussed their concerns before voting, and we all know how that turned out. Now we have the opportunity to improve part of Old Webster. I agreed with the RFP asking for ideas for improvements. I support smart development and agree that change can be good. But what we have here is a plan to essentially clear cut the area, take private property to build several apartment towers, award millions of dollars in TIF in a floodplain, and potentially not even complete the project. I do not support that. After town hall meetings and surveys allegedly seeking public input, nothing has changed. What have you done to redirect this project? So I ask that this time you please listen to all of the citizens who have come here to raise their concerns. We have some really smart people here who have studied this proposal, so please listen to them. Please listen to Mayor Welch. She can provide invaluable experience and guidance and has worked on numerous development projects in this community. All perspectives are important and should be considered, or at a minimum, discussed before you take action that could forever change our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Ann Yard, followed by Emily Shepherd.
I'm Ann Yard. I live at 465 Oak Street. For more than a year now, many Webster Groves residents, including myself, have been closely following the progress of the Old Webster redevelopment project, attending SG's town halls, meeting with some of you, attending meetings of the city council and other commissions. Here is the most important thing I've learned. The fate of a 15-acre parcel of land in downtown should be designed from the bottom up by business and property owners whose immediate future is at stake, by city residents both near and far from the area, and by elected city officials, not by a private developer. Engagement among all of us would not have resulted in the kind of destruction you are now forced to contemplate. The razing of 15 acres down to dirt, the demolitions of homes, a thriving nonprofit, and a generations-old family business, the felling of dozens of mature trees, and the elimination of wildlife habitat. If we were all sitting in a room and talking to each other, none of us would have thought that these were good ideas or acceptable trade-offs. We would not have considered 8 7-story buildings. We would have started with conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion that resulted in specific plans. We would have wrestled with the complexities of affordable housing and the challenges of funding, not just for the development area, but for the city as a whole. We would have included a multifaceted consideration of Shady Creek, its natural environment, its wildlife habitat, and its flooding problems. I think you've heard from enough of us by now to know that these were not conversations we had with the developer. And I get it, the developer is going to listen politely and do what they need to do to make a profit. But our job is to do the right thing for the city and to do it within a framework of fiscal responsibility, to create something that is beneficial to the city, sustainable in the long run, and something that we can be proud of. I think you know that this project is not it. I know that there are goals and challenges that you hoped this project might address. The internet use tax would have provided a small diversification of the city's revenue and could have been targeted for affordable housing programs. The duplex ordinance also could have provided additional housing options in a way that would have been much more incremental and much less traumatic than the proposal you have before you. Both were defeated, and you're left with a proposal that addresses those city challenges inadequately or at too great a cost. But here is the other important thing that I've learned over the past year. Focusing on an absurd proposal has brought many of us to some consensus about how this area of North Old Webster might meet its potential. People are in favor of development in this area. Everyone likes the idea of more affordable housing. They want to give Shady Creek some love, preserve the wildlife, and support the people who live and work in the area now. As divisive as the past year has been, I think that positive groundwork has been laid for moving forward with meaningful engagement between you and the community, and I hope you seize that opportunity.
Emily Shepherd, followed by Katie Cahoon.
Good evening. My name is Emily Hickson Shepherd, and I live at 411 Oak Street, 4 homes from the proposed redevelopment site. I submitted a longer version of these remarks for your packets. At first, I was excited about this idea, and I jumped in and I attended all the town hall meetings and focus groups that I could. I worked to get the word out to neighbors, and I even allowed SG to put a yard sign in my yard announcing one of their town halls. But as time passed and more information was shared, my concerns increased. When SG submitted their zoning application, alarm bells began to sound in earnest. From the presentations, letters, interviews, and comments from Mr. Chapman and his group, I am not at all convinced that this is the partner the city wants to join in a long-term relationship. I would like to touch on a few of the aspects of this project that seem appealing on the surface: housing options, walkability, and amenities. I agree that we need more housing options for younger and older residents, for all of us, really. I fail to see how the proposed condos at averaging $690,000 and apartments with rents of $2,000 per month and up would do that. This project provides more housing options for the wealthy. The 10% workforce housing will all be apartments per the developer, not condos. This does nothing to help people build equity, which should be one of the goals in true affordable housing. Affordable to purchase, not just to rent. I've heard recommendations to include a pedestrian bridge over the tracks, but have not seen that in SG's proposal. If new residents are not able to cross the tracks between Gore and Rock Hill, that could significantly decrease walkability. And if walking is not convenient, the new residents will drive. And once they're in their car, it's just as easy to go to Kirkwood or Brentwood or Maplewood as it is to go to Old Webster and shop. SG wants to take the sculpture park as part of their new gathering space. The Arts Commission does not support this, and I certainly do not support it either. To take that beautiful public entity and amenity and sign it over to a private developer would be a huge mistake. We stand to lose more than the sculpture park. The wildlife corridor that goes through along Shady Creek extends to the east and the west of the redevelopment zone. To interrupt that entire corridor for the benefit of a developer or even the city seems short-sighted. This development would be privately owned, approximately 15 acres in the middle of Webster, owned privately. Private roads, private, not public gathering space, maybe private security. Would we be able to walk through there, or will there be a curfew? This project is not progress. New is not always progress. Progress is making things better. This project only makes things better for the developer. I support development in the area, but it must respect existing businesses, residents, and the church. And I urge you to vote against these zoning changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Katie Cahoon, followed by Ralph Hofston.
Thank you. My name is Katie Cahoon. I live at 624 Bacon Avenue. However, I'm speaking to you tonight as the chair of the City Arts Commission. The City Arts Commission has drafted a letter, which I appreciate you're giving me the opportunity to read to you tonight. The Arts Commission wishes to register its opposition to the inclusion of the western portion of the Webster Grove Sculpture Park in the Douglas Hill redevelopment. The sculpture garden represents one of the most successful endeavors undertaken by the Arts Commission and embodies the Commission's goal to increase the presence and appreciation of art within the city. It was designed by SWT Design as a two-part garden. The individual plots of land are not symmetrical, but the park derives part of its beauty from the mirroring of the landscape design elements in each of the two sides of the garden. When the Arts Commission conceived of this garden, one hope was that the section of Gore Avenue that bifurcates the garden could be used for events by the city as well as city residents. That is not possible if the pavement is no longer flanked by the two parts of the park. For all of these reasons, the removal of half of the garden will negate the original concept and deny Webster Grove city residents one of the city's most appealing and successful cultural spaces. We urgently request that this section of the sculpture garden be removed from the plans for the Douglas Hill redevelopment project. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Ralph Hofston.
I get my other glasses. Can't see the paper otherwise. Oh, let's see. Okay. I have a statement. Too much to talk about, too little time. So this is my opinion. What will it take for the council to acknowledge that a large majority of Webster residents do not want this plan as it presently exists? Over 90% of public comments, the ones I've seen, since April 5th have been negative, covering all the issues while providing constructive ideas and suggested modifications. Meanwhile, positive commentary, there's been a few this tonight, has been hard to find except from City Hall. But rather than reiterate the list of practical concerns, all well known, I wish to speak to the intertwined ideas of the collective public voice
and it's my phrase, value-loaded intangibles that are the context for people speaking out. As SG Collaborative and the city would have it, all issues and problems are reducible to manageable administrative definition. Thus, we have a proposal process that is assumed to be a formality, heavy on meetings and reports, intended to justify the project and enable the developer to obtain approvals. During the process, the public is restricted to 3 minutes without the possibility of any interactive debate. Meanwhile, SG Collaborative holds the floor, details the plan, that answers soft questions on practical matters, all without a time limit, while free to repeat its false narrative of degraded properties, invented public need for its plan, and unproven benefits for Webster. What is missing in the process is the city's recognition of how the plan would negatively affect the quality of life for those in North and Northwest Webster. Citizens' comments reveal visceral reactions to an oversized plan that threatens values understood in the phrase, the character of Webster. These values are the intangibles. Part of the reasons we live here in quiet neighborhoods with good services despite higher taxes. Equally valued are other intangibles, such as preserving the creek basin, preserving small town architecture, and my contribution, the origin story of Black heritage since 1866 on Vinegar Hill. It's quite real. Given the citizen outcry and maybe the public's hope that City Hall will shape major decisions around the assumption that the public will is invested in the residents with the council and the government to ensure that the public's wishes are given priority. As such, the massive citizen rejection of the SG plan should serve as a mandate to the council. Just say no.
Thank you, Ralph.
I'm done.
All right, this is all of the speaker cards that we have for those who are here. But I have to tell you, I believe we have 60 participants on Zoom tonight, which is a rather sizable group. And anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak can use the hands up function. And so we do have a number of folks who we will call upon to speak. And so,
Madam Mayor, just if I may, for everyone on Zoom, when you're called upon, it'll just be audio. So you don't have to worry about camera, just hit your microphone.
okay. So I presume that you are putting the hands up function people on top here?
These come in order. So the first one there is the first hand up.
Okay, so it's Chris Earp who has his hand up.
You'll need to unmute. There you go.
Council, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Chris Earp, 72 Marshall Place. Thank you for listening. My home is located toward the western end of Marshall Place, where Marshall Place tees into North Gore Avenue. The corner of my house is roughly 250 feet from the edge of the proposed development. I have an interest in the zoning and development of this project because the location of my home is obviously inextricably tied to the geography of the site. I feel my quality of life will be negatively impacted both during the construction of this project and long after its completion. After reviewing the scheme, I have 3 concerns about the proposed rezoning. First 2 are practical in nature, and the third represents a little bit more global concern regarding the underlying argument for adding new construction to begin with. First, if this site is rezoned, I'm concerned about the scale of 8 7-story apartment buildings. I fully realize that we are in a preliminary phase of this process that in the design world is often called talkitecture in regard to drawings and renderings and so forth. However, even without dimensioned elevations, 7-story buildings are not in character with the adjacent homes. I'm sure that all of you know by now that this development is next to the Marshall Place Historic District. Our homes are on that National Register for a reason. They're unique in their history, in their architectural detail, their ornamentation, and they are without a doubt a great cultural asset to the city. The scale of this new project is inappropriate for the adjacent historic neighborhoods, especially in comparison to the scale of single-family homes on West Kirkham Avenue and my own street, Marshall Place. Second concern is the extra traffic generated by such a dense development. Marshall Place is and always has been a cut-through street, especially when the UP train stops southbound traffic at North Gore. You've all heard about this. A more in-depth and more importantly, long-term traffic study that includes accurate train data will need to be analyzed in order to get a realistic picture of traffic concerns and patterns in the immediate area. T2 Traffic, the engineer on this project's response regarding train crossing data that, quote, an evaluation of the impacts of train closures cannot and would not be performed via standard engineering practice, unquote, is disingenuous. Unique situations require standards to be modified. This is where a long-term study will be valuable. Long-term study will provide data that will refute their claim that, quote, although train crossing closures do occasionally overlap at peak hour traffic, this cannot be documented as a daily occurrence, unquote. Furthermore, their claim asserts that there is no way to document driver preferences who alter their route during a train crossing. I would implore anybody on the council to stand at the end of my driveway when a train crosses at North Gore. The southbound driver preferences are made crystal clear as they drive the wrong way up North Gore, turn left onto Marshall Place and gun it. That's when you run for your life. Finally, the option that traffic entering or departing the proposed development can connect to Elm via Kirkham Avenue or Marshall Place is not a solution. Cut-through driving on Marshall Place is already bad enough. Adding thousands of cars due to the new development will only make my street more dangerous than it already is. My third concern, final concern, is larger in scope. I'd like the council to look at the scheme from a bird's eye view and ask time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
if you have some written comments, you want to continue this, then please submit your comments in writing and then we'll have them. Thank you, Chris. Jessica Perry.
Jessica, go ahead and unmute.
Jessica, unmute.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
This is actually Karen McMillan, and I'm reading a statement on behalf of the McMillan family who owns Rolling Ridge and the properties at and around 60 North Gore. Since 1893, the Schultz-McMillan family has owned the real estate and businesses at 60 North Gore. Since 1959, that business has been Rolling Ridge Nursery. Over the last several years, we have reinvested substantially in structural maintenance and improvements to this large historic building. Our primary concerns are parking availability and traffic flow. Over time, we've purchased 4 off-street parking lots to accommodate our customers and employees and to keep parking and traffic away from Marshall Place. With the addition of the Willow Room event space, the importance of our parking lots are as high as ever. All 4 of our lots sit in the proposed Douglas Hill redevelopment area and provide a minimum of 60 off-street parking spaces. Without these parking lots, where will our customers park? How will we meet parking requirements by the city? We've not yet seen any rendering of the Douglas Hill redevelopment that realistically answers the parking needs of our businesses. We do not agree with the process set forth, forcing property owners to sell their property unwillingly. We have concern that the traffic study as presented greatly underestimates the burden of traffic from the redevelopment area. Just because the side streets branching from Old Webster are not stressed to capacity does not mean they should be. Long-term phase construction threatens the survivability of our businesses. Traffic flow is vital to our retail operation and event space. The impact of the proposed construction isn't something we take lightly. We urge the City Council to include our minimum of 60 off-street parking spaces in the development agreement with SG Collaborative and to not approve the use of eminent domain. Thank you for your time and service to our community.
Thank you. Thank you. Charles Bell. Mr. Bell. Mr. Bell?
Yes. I just found the unmute button.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. I'm Charles Bell, a nearly lifelong resident and architect in Webster. I was involved with Old Webster redevelopment planning in 1997. The issues from 97 were nearly identical to those we are facing today. And so I'd like to address those feasibility issues we learned and addressed in 1997, and especially after claims made to the last Planning Commission hearing, October 5th. The developers have reiterated that this project is not financially feasible unless they can make it too large. Unfortunately, it is also unfeasible in several other ways. Every member of the Planning Commission, October 5th, stated reservations about this project. In fact, they were only willing to give this proposal a minimal 4-4 vote. Excavation of the entire lower half of the site would be down to the actual base level of Shady Creek, removing bedrock and all of the delicate original geology and vegetation of this hillside. This would remove all of the old growth, tree canopy, and all of the understory vegetation. It would be 2085 before any trees of this caliber could be reestablished. Canalizing Shady Creek would cause the same catastrophic failures as University City Upper River to Pear and the Black Creek tributary of Deer Creek. This will be a sun-beaten, lifeless, concrete channeled algae choke massive flooding problem. Channelizing the floodway doesn't correct flooding, it makes it worse. Ironically, after naming this project after the great emancipator Frederick Douglass, this project would physically crowd out and tower 7 stories over the historic Black Old Community Missionary Baptist Church and neighborhood. Traffic circulation volumes with 2 new street crossings and tie-ups at crossings of the Union Pacific, the largest railroad line in North America, would be unparalleled in Webster. Just for reference, this is the same volume and residential unit count as Webster's entire original Tuxedo Park District. Significant buildings and parts of almost all businesses would be destroyed in the demolition for this project. Rolling Ridges Properties, Annick Orchard Pacific, Apartments, Red Lemoore, and St. Louis Gym Center are just a few examples. And lastly, TIF is the wrong vehicle for this project, and it would be readily abused because this would effectively be a subsidy for the private sector. It would divert funding away from schools and essential services. It lacks transparency and oversight by the very community it pretends to benefit. This project is too large. It will cost us all too much. It would disturb and destroy.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. We
This
appreciate
isn't
your
feasible.
comments. Thank you. We appreciate your comments. All right, our next says North Webster resident. I don't know.
We'll need a name and an address.
We'll need a name and address for whomever you are, Mr. or Miss North Webster resident.
Hi, my name is Tom. I live on Foot Street.
Can you tell us your name again, sir?
My name
Don?
is Tom.
Okay. Last
I live
name?
on Foot Street. Shoals.
Okay. Can you give us your address, please?
Sure. 433 Foot Avenue on Foot Street, Webster Groves, 63119.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll just get right to it. Whatever you think about this proposal, whether you like it or you don't, this development is going to fundamentally change our neighborhood and our daily lives. And with that in mind, is the city council open to getting our community's consent through a public vote? Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Eric Luders. Eric, give us your name and your address. Are you with it? There you go.
Yes, I am. Sorry about that. Hi, my name is Eric Leaders. It's Leaders 325 West Kirkham Avenue. I'm one of 13 residences who immediately border the proposed projects. I participated in every single meeting and provided comments at each one since the spring of 2020. In the beginning, my wife and I were interested in the development, or even were supportive. We're excited about what the opportunities might bring. We voiced relevant concerns with the expectation that they would be heard and acted on. They were not. This project was said to have sustainable goals, but no sustainable certifications are being pursued. Programs like LEED for neighborhood development or sustainable sites could have allowed this project to be a national showcase, but this did not happen. The developers stated that they would build green, but how are they being held accountable? Green roofs, solar panels, composting, saving topsoil are exceedingly narrow in vision on what could be an exemplar of sustainable design and fitting of Webster's values towards stewardship of the environment. Bare minimum legal requirements to mitigate stormwater is hardly a sustainable goal. In addition, the green space in the front of our home will be eliminated, but then replanted elsewhere, not to the benefit of the nearby residents. How is this equitable? City staff are stating north-facing buildings are 5 stories, when in fact they're 7 stories tall. Meanwhile, to the south, they're stating that there are 5 stories. So it's confusing. So this project is a wall. It's a wall separating North Webster from South Webster. There have been no renderings showing what my view will be like facing south out of the front windows of my house, and for good reason. Such a rendering would show that this project is for what it is, a wall. If density is truly concerned, why not make this project more equitable and have the south buildings 7 stories facing the railroad and 5 stories facing Kirkham? City staff are also proposing to widen Kirkham Avenue to facilitate more traffic flow near where the proposed lights would be. How would Webster and City Council respond to a project proposal widening Elm? Imagine green space out of your front yard being replaced by a widening road, a 7-story complex of buildings, and a newly constructed alleyway facing to your dining room window. The street you live on and the sidewalk where your young child walks on, taking on a projected 80% of the thousands of additional vehicles and increased traffic associated with 1.5 million square feet of development. Would this scale of project be acceptable if we were on Lockwood? If I was on Glendale or Elm? Is this project only okay because it's on Kirkham, or is it North Webster? I have been and still could be in favor of development, but not to this scale. This scale is not for Webster. Scale it back, make it for our community, redevelop it the right way. This is not it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Caroline Miller. Okay, Caroline, you can unmute. Time to comment. We see your picture, so we know you're there. Just unmute.
Mayor, we can come back.
Okay, Caroline, we're going to come back to you and we're going to go on to Chuck Shepherd. Okay, Chuck.
Yeah, so I'm Chuck Shepherd and I live at 411 Oak Street. So I am opposed to the Douglas Hill zoning ordinance. When I first heard about the project, I was really excited because there'd be new places I could walk to really closely, right? But this excitement quickly changed into shock during the first town hall when we figured out the scale of the project. I never imagined a project proposal so out of scale with the rest of Webster Groves. 18 months later, the project is basically the same as it was presented in the first town hall. There are many items that should be changed about Douglas Hill, but it's impossible to talk about most of them. Here are 2 items that impact the zoning ordinance. One is the zoning ordinance ignores many of the standards established by the city. One example is this is building height. According to section 53.113.2 of the code, buildings may be up to 45 feet tall. SG Collaborative is seeking 80-foot tall buildings, seeking an additional 35 feet over what would be allowed anywhere else in Webster Groves. If 80 feet is acceptable for the North Old Webster project, it should also be considered acceptable for similar districts like Old Orchard, Old Webster, or Watson Road. The second thing is buffer zones should be required when PC district boundaries touch residential boundaries. If the city decides to approve the project, a buffer zone should be considered where the Douglas Hill project is adjacent to residential. Webster Groves code limits buildings to 35 feet or 35 feet adjacent to residential. I hope the council considers limiting the height of the buildings in the PC district to that height when they're within 100 feet of residential lots. An example of this is in Clayton. Westmoreland is a residential street 1 block north of Maryland Avenue. It's separated from the large downtown buildings by a road that's like 1 or 2 stories tall. So every community needs to change and grow. It has to be appropriate change. Douglas Hill does not offer the right type of change. It offers expensive condos and apartments while the city wants to diversify its housing options. It destroys the Shady Creek Wildlife Corridor, replacing it with concrete. It is not in harmony with the surrounding neighborhoods. Instead, it towers over them. More housing, retail, and commercial options are needed in Webster Groves, but not at the cost that SG Collaboratives asked from the city. I moved to Webster Groves 20 years ago because of the wonderful neighborhood on Oak Street. Many neighbors that live here think that that is the best street in Webster Groves. One of the amazing things of Webster Groves is there's probably more than 100 streets or 1,000 streets, whatever, where everyone feels the same way, and that's an amazing place. So, and what I think is a good development creates new communities without diminishing existing ones. The Douglas.
Thank you, Chuck.
Failed to do this.
We appreciate your 3 minutes of comments. We're going to move to our next hand up, which is CC Bartels.
Okay, thank you. Oops, let me get my screen. Oh, shoot.
We're here, Cece. We can hear you.
I know, but I'm having trouble getting my email up now. I've been waiting and now I can't get my email. Well, the point I really want to make is I'm in complete support of this project. I find that I always wince when I hear somebody saying, oh, you live in Webster Graves. And maybe all of you guys have heard that before, but I don't like that. And it bothers me that I live in Webster Graves. So let's see, I've got my email maybe here, but the gist of it is we're a progressive community. We are a vibrant, creative community. And this is a derelict piece of property, if you ask me, and it's waiting to be developed. And we had our restaurants come on board and add vibrancy to our community. And now it's time to bring more action and vibrancy into our community with this development. And then I also would like to say, I live at the 100 block of Jefferson. I'm only 1 block from Lockwood, not more than 2 blocks from this development. And the developer is in my proximity, and he's lived in my proximity for decades. And I'm very confident that he doesn't want to face within his 2 blocks something he's going to be embarrassed about or have difficulty living with. So I'm here to endorse the project. I think it's time we get on with developing Webster and having a chance to see it go forward.
Thank you, CC. Appreciate your comments. All right. I don't know that we have any more hands up, so I'm going to say once more to the 60 people who are on Zoom tonight, if anyone wants to speak now, please use the hands up function. And we don't see any additional hands up amongst those of you who are still out there. Okay, thank you. And I will say one last time, if there's anybody else here in the audience who wishes to provide a comment, you're welcome to do that. All right, if not, then at this point, we're going to stop the public hearing, but I don't think we're going to close it. So I would ask if the council would vote to continue the public hearing until the next meeting. Did somebody?
Mayor, I move that we continue the public hearing until our next meeting.
Second.
Councilmember Arnold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson? Yes. Mayor Welch?
Yes, all right. So we will continue with the public hearing, and people may submit more testimony, and we will also let you know about plans to have some additional future engagement with the public, and that is coming. But we talked about that tonight, and we have yet to make final plans. We'll get that out. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on with our agenda this evening, and we're going to start with remarks of visitors, and I have 2 speaker cards. The first is from Mr. Buck.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
we do have the city attorney online who wanted to give an update on Douglas Hill. It's certainly at your leisure when you want to take that. I just want to let you know he is online.
Oh, he has an update?
He does.
Okay, well then let's go ahead and take that before we do the remarks of visitors.
Thank you.
Neil?
Good evening. Good
Good evening. I wanted to address the issues that have arisen regarding timing on the charter amendments that have been proposed and that have been presented to Katie and have been discussed, I'm sure, tonight previously. The timing on this is of course not an initiative or a referendum. This is a charter amendment. And as a consequence, we looked at section 15, article 15 of our charter in order to understand how this works. There are two component parts that we need to look at. One is, and first and foremost, is the timing issue. So under our charter, it says that it will go to you for proposal, and it has to go to an election. If there is an ordinance that is passed, it must go to election not less than 60 days. And so that's read actually more than 60 days. When you look at the Missouri statutes in this matter, it says that you have to use a certified election date. The next election date that we would have that would be available would be in April of 22. So my opinion is that the earliest that this could come and be placed on a ballot would be April of 2022. I also asked that, and I got permission from Dr. Peoples to have David Struble, who was our former city attorney with Cunningham Vogel, also look at this without having voiced my opinion on this. And he has rendered the same opinion, and he has put that in an opinion letter that is available, and I will forward on to everyone. There is a second component to this, though, and that component is that the charter amendment has to be reviewed to determine whether or not it is consistent with both the Constitution of the state of Missouri and the Missouri state statutes. I also have formed an opinion on this, but I've asked David Struble and his firm, again with the permission of Dr. Peoples, to do this, to also form his opinion regarding the things that are requested in that particular ordinance or that particular charter amendment proposal to determine whether it is consistent with and in keeping with state law. And so we are awaiting that decision. I expect that we will have a written letter, a formal letter expressing his opinion, and that will come in November. And the reason that we have done this in terms of sending it out for an additional opinion is given the gravity, given the magnitude of the things that are being requested here, we wanted to have more than one set of eyes on this. And so we are awaiting that second opinion, and I think that that's a good idea. So as soon as I have more on that, I will let you know. But the short order at this point is that the earliest we would see this on a ballot would be April of 22. And that's both my opinion and the opinion of Mr. Struble.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bruntrager. We await your the report that will come from you as well as Mr. Strobel. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have two additional remarks of visitor cards. First from Dave Buck, and I don't know if Dave is still here or not. He left. And the second one is from Kathy Hart.
Hello, Kathy Hart, 821 Newport. And I wanted to talk about something other than Douglas Hill. I was shocked today to learn of 2 more resignations at City Hall. This marks our 6th employee in City Hall who felt the need to resign since April. It's interesting to me that these employees are all women. 5 were long-term employees, and most had no other job lined up. And now I hear you are talking about eliminating sick payouts. In my opinion, that will result in more long-term employees leaving and an even greater staffing shortage or crisis than we already have. It seems like something is up at City Hall. What kind of work environment has been created that has caused all these women to feel the need to resign? We have lost our award-winning director of finance, our HR specialist, HR assistant, public works administrative coordinator, and now accountant and our payroll or HR employee. That leaves only one person in charge of city finances and potentially payroll. This person is quite competent and has a bachelor's degree, but has no experience in financial forecasting and is now handling the responsibilities of 4 people, including director of finance. We are at a critical point. We have an unprecedented budget deficit, yet City Hall continues to spend freely on furniture, studies, and surveys. We have nobody to run checks and balances in the finance department because nobody knows how. We certainly can't count on our new assistant city manager to do that. By the way, he was appointed by the city manager without posting the position internally or externally. In his defense, he cannot be expected to be responsible for our finances or for checks and balances because he does not have a finance background and only has coursework towards a Bachelor of Arts degree. So my questions are, what is going on at City Hall? Why do our long-term female employees keep leaving with no other jobs lined up? And how are we going to manage our finances? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going on to new business. I don't think we have anything there to announce. So we'll go on to unfinished business, and Council Member Smith, could you do 9168, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the third and final reading of Bill number 9168 and call for subsequent adoption.
Second.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Wait a minute,
Council-
doesn't somebody have to read that ordinance out first? Is that your job?
Neil's
Your-
job.
You almost-
Your new job?
I heard the roll call. I was like, what are you doing? So,
Let's
Thank you-
go for it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bill number 9168, third reading, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 7682 and establishing a new policy for the relocation of businesses and residences due to the redevelopment plans adopted pursuant chapters 99, 100, and 353 of the revised statutes of Missouri.
All
Sorry,
right.
I almost took your job. I'm like-
All right. Does anybody have a comment or question? If not, call for the vote.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Mayor Welch?
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold?
Yes.
All right, 9168 has passed. Does anyone care to remove anything from the consent agenda? If not, Councilmember Bliss, could you call for its approval?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Mayor Welch?
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
All right, the consent agenda has been approved. Tonight, we've made one appointment to the Green Space Advisory Commission with an outstanding person, Joe Elke, will join us. So we have no executive closed session since Mr. Bruntrager is not here tonight, but he's here on Zoom. And if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and declare this meeting adjourned. And thank you all for coming. 30, 48.